And you can't even drive? I can. Are you stupid, eh? Are you a stupid fool? Well, why can't you drive then? You can't even drive! A bit grey today, isn't it?
Well, hello everyone. I'm here. Welcome to another Deepest Lore. D, how you doing? Are you ready to break in the news, boys?
Ready.
Yes, we're back with Bowie Part 3. I have to say, even though the live audience has not been that great for these, the kind of 2-week traffic has been pretty strong on the Bowie streams. And I've even come across people who have found me through Bowie, believe it or not. So very strange pipeline. Anyway, so we have to bear in mind the Johnny Come Latelys.
I've noticed that these specialty Deepest Lores, they all end up sort of capping off at about the same number of views. Like I was looking at like the Residents and the Wu-Tang and you know Warhol. I mean, they all seem to kind of settle at the same view number. These are the true deepest Lores. Yeah,
they are this audience is the true elect, you might say.
Indeed.
And because the unwashed masses who they'll never hear this, of course, so we can just slag them off.
Indeed.
Anyway, before we we're going to be covering Diamond Dogs, Young Americans, and Station to Station today, 74 to 76.
What? No Bowie? No David live?
Well, we can talk. We can cover.
We can
David
mention
live.
that. Yeah,
yes.
we can mention that.
But just before we get going, I have to remind people of the promo code Scorcher, the summer sale that's going on. Remember? Ow! It's the academic agency summer sale. Use the promo code Scorcher. 25% off all courses. Scorcher. Get it now. All right, that's enough of that. We didn't need to watch it all. Well, what are some of the great courses you can get on academic agency, D? Well, you can get the Trivium. You can get you can get Foundations of Entrepreneurship. There's so many. So
that'll really reel them in.
Yeah. And you can get Foundations of Politics as well. Look, what about this one? Foundations of Politics, only £350. Buy it now. See. Okay.
Want to learn how to calculate the marginal returns of a burger?
But yeah, like that's on the economics one. I don't have that one line. I should get that one line.
I just remember that nodding moronic family.
Yeah. What's this insert ad I've got? What's that?
If you like Academic Agents content on this channel,
that's semi-agog.
There's
a rhetoric one as well. Hold on. Friends, Romans, countrymen, come this way. That's probably the best one. I don't know. Anyway, you can get all those and more using a promo code Scorcher. But anyway, D, is there anything you would like to promote before we get started?
No. So,
Diamond Dogs. I've got my David Buckley book. I've got my Nicholas Pegg book. But before we get going, I thought it'd be worth mentioning that Diamond Dogs was one of the first Bowie albums that I read about extensively before I actually was able to listen to it. Then I had to obviously track down the CD, which in my day involved literally getting on a bus ride to Cardiff, or persuading one of my parents to take me literally to Cardiff so I could go to Virgin Megastore or HMV. And then, that's how you would obtain a CD back in those days. I mean, we did have a Woolworths in my town, but you'd only get stuff like Now 32. They weren't going to stock Diamond Dogs in Woolworths.
No.
So, yeah. So it's a kind of, this is something that I imagine, like a young person today, they hear us talk about Diamond Dogs, and then they literally just put it up at the touch of a button, and there it is to listen to. Whereas the whole process of reading about it in my books, in my magazines and things, there were double-page spreads all about Diamond Dogs and the Halloween Jack character and all that. And then actually building up the anticipation to listen to it. You've already made quite an investment in time and in money before you've actually listened to the damn thing. So I remember with Diamond Dogs, the first couple of times I listened to the album, I wasn't quite sure, but by the 102nd listen, where you literally just force yourself to listen to it over and over again because this is the album you bought that month. I came to quite love it in a couple of weeks or whatever. But that is a process that I'm not sure can actually take place anymore.
No,
you just don't have that journey.
No, that's gone. I mean, even if we didn't have, the sort of streaming sites or the internet, you could certainly just, certainly order it something through Amazon. So yeah, I think that is completely gone. The idea of the sort of quest and the kind of almost, kind of roulette. You're literally sort of.
But I mean, I remember
taking a chance.
It wasn't just with Diamond Dogs. I remember it with many albums, like the whole process of getting into Lou Reed or Tom Waits, or like there's a real barrier to entry to some of these artists, and Dylan as well, but you literally basically force yourself to like them, like through like familiarization and the repeated process. Whereas now I just think that a 20-something would give an album one listen and just think, oh, well, that's not for me, and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. They don't. There's no investment, so there's no kind of, what do they care? If they don't like it, they can just listen to something else, So yeah, and also you couldn't it's not like, well, I'm going to go get a Bowie record. Well, you go to the music shop, and they're not going to have all of them. I mean, yes. You're lucky if they, they'll have the sort of most popular ones. They may, if you go to a better sort of record shop, you may be able to do a bit better. But it was also just the luck of the draw what you would actually be able to buy. So
yeah, and I don't know about you, but often when it comes to an album, say like Diamond Dogs, I tended to find a track that I really liked, and then that was my way into the album. And then when you wear that track out to death, you start going to some of the other ones, and you get like, with a lot of these Bowie albums, I've had periods where almost every single track has been my favorite at some time or another. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I first got the album, I loved We Are the Dead, which is a track nobody ever talks about.
Yeah, which I did as well, strangely enough.
Yeah. And I We Are the Dead into the ground. And I tended to skip over Sweet Thing and Candidate. But then over time, I came to realize that Sweet Thing and Candidate actually is probably where the heart of the album is, and are actually like mesmerizingly brilliant tracks. But it's a kind of like, I don't know, you have to have a journey as a way in to an album. And I don't know, for some reason I remember Diamond Dogs was one of the ones I had a longer journey with than some of the others. So yes. So in terms of where we are in the Bowie chronology, Ziggy's broke up the band. What happened after Aladdin Sane? Because that was still with the Spiders from Mars, and so was Pinups, which is what we did last time.
Yeah.
How did they end up breaking up in the end?
Well, they ended up breaking up because that concert, which was filmed by D.A. Pennebaker, which became a live album later on in the 70s, that was filmed after, I believe, after the Aladdin Sane sessions, if I'm not mistaken. And that, I feel like I need to check that, but that literally was the last performance they did, and they went their separate ways. I mean, he also, of course, ended not only with Spiders from Mars, but he ended the relationship with Ken Scott, who had produced the previous few albums.
Yeah, Tony Visconti is back. I note on the producer of Diamond Dogs is listed as David Bowie himself.
It is Bowie, and Bowie was the producer. Visconti did not produce Diamond Dogs. He assisted with it, but he was Bowie did produce it. It was his first record that he entirely produced himself.
But Visconti is back in the mix. He's according to my notes here, he's listed as strings. So he does the strings on the album.
He did string arrangements and other things, and I think helped with the mix.
So then we have Herbie Flowers, who's back, the bassist, who was on one of the early albums. One of the pre-Spiders albums. Mike Garson, the keyboardist, is back. Alan Parker plays guitar in 1984. But basically, almost everything is played by Bowie on this album. He does vocals, guitars, all the saxes, the Moog, the Mellotron. Well, he doesn't play the drums. There's a drummer called Tony Newman and Ainsley Dunbar. So, but essentially, we're in with a new set of people for this album, with a few friends in the mix as well. So
yeah, I would say that the most profound part of the personnel changes for Diamond Dogs were that Bowie took on all the guitar roles himself. Except for the bass guitar, which was quite a prospect because Bowie is a very good rhythm guitarist, but he's not really. He's no Mick Ronson. He's not a lead really, and he's said in interviews that he really practiced. Like he spent a lot of time practicing because he knew that he had to be good. Like if he was going to, presume to play all the leads himself, he had to be good. So he did spend a lot of time sort of polishing his chops and doing the lead guitar. Strangely enough, I think that his slight erratic, rough edge is part of what makes this album work so well. I think that this album is frequently cited as a huge influence on punk. I mean, this is sometimes called a proto-punk album, and there are people who even say that that costume that he briefly wore as Halloween Jack was a kind of a big influence on punk fashion as well. So, but I do think that the slightly quasi, slightly above amateur levels of guitar is actually really a part of the soul of this record.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in the earlier period, you see him with a 12-string guitar, like on Space Oddity. He's got a 12-string.
Yeah,
is that something he continues playing, or is that just? I never really thought about Bowie the guitarist. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it does. Well, as I said, he was a rhythmic guitarist. He did a lot of acoustic stuff. A lot of the acoustic work is him, but it didn't really come back. I mean, that I can't think of any. Certainly on any of these records, I can't think of him doing anything with 12-string. I think it's mostly electric guitar. So
I have a bit of a flair from the book here. It says. At the Chateau de Heroville in the summer of 1973, Bowie told a journalist that the next album would be a musical in one act called Tragic Moments.
God's sake. Yeah.
But then he told others in the autumn that it would be called Revenge, or The Best Haircut I Ever Had.
Best haircut I ever had, yeah.
and that it would feature protest songs about how bad the food in Harrods is these days. It was less clear that he was just enjoying himself. There were a lot of changes going on around that time, Mick Ronson later recalled. David had all these little projects. He wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do. While Ronson began work on his solo debut, Slaughter on 10th Avenue, Bowie entered a period of transition. No longer able to brave the fans who regularly beat a path to the doors of Haddon Hall, he and Angela took the decision to leave Beckenham. They moved briefly into Diana Rigg's flat in Maida Vale. That's Diana Rigg, the Bond girl, and later on the Game of Thrones star, right?
Oh yes, the Queen of Thorns. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I mean, for my money, probably the best Bond girl, because she's in that one with George Lazenby, isn't she?
Indeed. So, Diana Rigg of blessed memory. I think she's passed.
Oh, is she really?
I think so.
I missed that. She's dead. Okay, rest in peace. And thence to the 5-story Georgian terraced house in Chelsea's fashionable Oakley Street.
Yeah.
You can't really be rock and roll royalty without a rock and roll palace, explained Angela in her autobiography. And from their opulent new residence, the Bowies entertained Rod Stewart and Ronnie Wood of the Faces, together with the Jaggers, Bianca and Mick. In October, Bowie recorded a studio version of 1984/Dodo medley, premiered in the 1980 Floor Show, marking not only his last work with producer Ken Scott, who departed to work on Supertramp's Crime of the Century, which is a good album. I mean, Supertramp are good for what they do, you know. I mean, I'm not really into them. I'm just saying they do really good, like pristine pop, I guess you'd call it.
And his, their departure was mutually, it wasn't rancorous. They both just said, well, basically, you can't really, sort of musically evolve if you keep doing the same thing. So it was an amicable split.
Yes, but also his final recording at Trident, the studio that had borne a majority of his work for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Trident's reputation as a state-of-the-art venue waned during the late 1970s, and the studio eventually closed its doors, ironically enough, in 1984.
84, yeah.
Beware the savage yaw. During October and November, David was often at the Olympic Studios in Barnes, producing tracks for planned album by the Astronauts. The three-piece group devised as a showcase for his new girlfriend, the 18-year-old American Ava Cherry. I mean, I'm guessing he means friend who is a girl and not a girlfriend, given that he's married.
No, they were most likely having an affair. Yeah, that was one of the final nails in the coffin for Angela and David's marriage. So
I see. Yeah. It wasn't wearing the man skirts. It was going out with another girl.
No, he was shagging an American R&B person. Yeah.
I mean, just while we're on that score, what about the alleged kind of, sex with men that he had during this period? Didn't she care about that, or did that not happen?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think it really happened, but who knows?
I mean, if ever they were going to do anything with the Jaggers, I reckon the sojourn to the Rock and Roll Palace right around this time would have been the time, right? Surely. I mean, but as we discussed last week, it seems more likely to be a marketing ploy, right? Was the main man company trying to shock the American audience?
I do have to say that some women aren't so bothered by that sort of thing with their male partner, shall we say? So I won't go into it further, but they're sometimes much less averse to that sort of thing than to.
I mean, I'm sure I remember reading back in the day that Angie Bowie had involvement with other women as well at some point. But again, how much of this stuff is just, pop legend and how much is true is hard to say.
Exactly. Yeah.
The project was still. Yeah.
Oh, hang on. One other thing I want to mention. It's very hard to imagine, but when Bowie bought that house in Chelsea, I believe, I can't remember who it was. Was it De Vries? One of his manager, perhaps, told him not to do it because he couldn't afford it. And again, this idea, in 2022, that someone of his, prominence, even though he wasn't a huge superstar yet, but someone of his, sort of recognition and success at that time, that he had money, that he didn't have a lot of cash flow, and that is a common theme with some of these people, certainly in the 70s. I mean, again, they unless they control their own finances, like the Rolling Stones, a lot of them had very raw deals, and so yeah, Bowie. Literally, when he bought that house, he really couldn't afford it. So, which is strange.
So what? Did he have a massive mortgage? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, basically, I think. Now, of course, within a year, he could afford it because, yeah.
Okay. He says hold on. The project was shelved. This is the Astronauts project. Although a 12-track compilation called People from Bad Homes eventually appeared in 1995. Among these songs were early versions of numbers that would later surface on Young Americans, Scary Monsters, and Tonight. I mean, basically everything on Tonight was written like 10 years earlier. Because he was just kind of burnt out when he wrote that. Okay. So I'm trying to get to... fast forward a little bit to the actual album here. There's a huge amount of backstory for this one.
Yeah.
So the next thing we get is he wanted to do something with Orwell's 1984.
Yeah.
First of all, he said, I'm doing Orwell's 1984 on television. The exact origins of Bowie's interest in staging Orwell's novel remain a moot point. He had clearly been working on the idea well over a month earlier, as evidenced by the Orwellian 1984/Dodo medley. Main Man president and Bowie biographer Tony Zanetta later claimed that the impetus came from Tony Ingressia, the director of Pork. In September, in September of 1973, De Vries had dispatched Tony Ingressia to England to co-write and direct a musical production of George Orwell's 1984, one of David's favourite books. Now, I will say, Dee, that around the time that I was, just before I got into this album, and if we ever do the Kubrick stuff, I'll talk about this again as well, I read 1984, and it's the only book I've read and then read immediately again. I remember getting to the end, being blown away, and then reading it all again in one sitting, and then walking around in a kind of daze for about 2 or 3 days afterwards. So it had a profound effect on me as well. I don't know where you were the first time you read.
Yeah, I mean, I think many people remember that. I mean, that certainly, and people tend to read that book fairly young, at a fairly young age, and yeah, it's certainly quite a revelation to a young person, that book.
Yeah, unlike a lot of people, I got quite into the Manuel Goldstein kind of book within a book. That was one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Because it goes on for quite a bit, but there's like a whole political manifesto in the middle of that. Anyway, David loathed doing anything on assignment. They worked together for a few days, then David refused to get out of bed. Nevertheless, David's discussions with Ingressia had stimulated his imagination. In November, Bowie claimed to have written 20 new songs for 1984, which would be almost a kitchen sink kind of thing. I shall look very different in it, and there's a lot of good music in the show. Some of it is as much as 3 years old. I kept a lot of songs back because I knew I wanted them for some kind of show. Neither project came to fruition. The Ziggy Stardust show was rejected as a retrograde step, thank God. Although 2 of its new songs, Rebel Rebel and Rock and Roll With Me, were salvaged for use on the next album. And it's funny, Dee, because when I was listening to the album earlier today to refresh my memory, I totally forgot that Rock and Roll With Me even existed. And I was like, oh, this is a weird song to be on this album. But yes, well, that explains it, I guess, because it came from...
neither of those songs really fit on that record. I mean, they fit in a weird way, but you can tell that they're disconnected quite heavily from the core material.
At the end of 1973, George Orwell's widow, Sonia Orwell, I guess, withheld permission for the 1984 project. Undeterred, David relocated his new enthusiasms in a creation of his own, the urban wilderness of Hunger City, where his Orwellian compositions would form the basis of the dystopian post-apocalyptic nightmare of Diamond Dogs. It is implied the idea of the breakdown of a city, said David in 1999, a disaffected youth that no longer had home unit situations, but lived as gangs on roofs and really had the city to themselves. You can see the Kubrick thing again here.
Again, yeah, exactly, yeah.
For a time, the album's working title was We Are the Dead, a key quotation from 1984. But the work that finally emerged had moved beyond the margins of Orwell's novel. I mean, I would dispute that. I still think it's a pretty thin.
It's a pretty thin. Yeah, it is a pretty. I mean, like many of his, things. It's a pastiche of things. But yeah, I mean, would you have a fucking song in the middle of it called 1984?
Yeah, it's followed by Big Brother. Followed by literally Big
Brother. Yeah.
Anyway,
by the way, the Orwell's widow, it wasn't just Bowie that she refused. She refused to give the rights to 1984 to anyone. The only reason they were able to make that film with John Hurt was that she died, in 1980.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So no, she would not sell the rights to anyone.
Well, one of the absolute best Richard Burton performances in that film, if you ask me.
Yeah,
I actually really dig that version and how they do the torture scenes and so on.
It's very grim. It's a very grim film.
Very grim. Do you know, by the way, that character O'Brien, I learned, and if you buy The Populist Delusion, you'll also learn this, was based on James Burnham. So O'Brien in 1984 is literally Orwell's rendition of James Burnham, and I didn't know that. So,
wow, I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. That's,
now, of course, my postmodern brain, I always think of O'Brien as being. Remember when Costanza and Seinfeld got in that limo, and they were mistaken? They thought they were like white supremacists, like going to a rally. They thought Costanza was pretending to be someone called O'Brien.
He's usually Art Vandelay, isn't he? Isn't that his usual?
Yeah, Art Vandelay, but they got into that limo and they were like, there's some low key elements to Seinfeld that make me really question the motivations of
we could one day, D, I don't know if it'll fly on YouTube, but we could do a kind of against the grain based Larry David based Jerry Seinfeld stream.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes think it may be the most anti-Semitic show ever produced.
Okay, let's carry on.
Bowie.
Yes. Where were we? Oh, yes. So both the fragmented lyrics and the portrait of urban America's sordid meltdown were clearly indebted to Burroughs, while the music was a four-way tussle between the receding sounds of glam, the rising influence of black soul, the synthesized nightmares of the man who sold the world, and the ubiquitous rock and roll swagger of Jagger. That's what he says. Even though this is wank music writing, I can kind of see what he's saying. That
he's absolutely right. It's a weird matrix. I mean, Diamond Dogs is a weird matrix of a lot of things that shouldn't go together. I mean, absolutely, you can hear the Plastic Soul, sort of black R&B and funk influenced Bowie that would appear in Young Americans. You could hear that coming in very clearly. You can hear the absolute receding of glam. In fact, I think the only song that even sort of touches it is Rebel Rebel, and that's an older song. And of course, as someone in the chat said, Rebel Rebel, they always thought it was a Rolling Stones song, and it very much, that riff is very much and the punk thing, I think the weird proto-punk thing is also in. So it is a very strange crossroads, this record. I always think of this record as being a kind of hot mess that worked out really well, even though it's a mess.
Its face is a mess, but it's a total blam blam. You would say.
Total blam blam. Yeah.
Now, one thing occurred to me, by the way, is that in many ways too, though, it is also a sequel to Aladdin Sane. It is a natural next step after Panic in Detroit and all that stuff.
Yeah. Now
we're like descending even further down into kind of degradation and urban decay, and I think this is a kind of very natural next step. But yes, it sounds differently. Also, Peg says a significant innovation was the introduction of a brand new Bowie voice. Sweet Thing and Big Brother unveil the sonorous basso profundo that would become a key element in David's vocal armory and a fundamental influence on the goth bands of the 1980s. And that's what we were talking about last week, the Bowie voice, basically.
Yeah. And shows up in full in full regalia in this record. I make you a deal like any other candidate. Yeah, and it basically sort of anchors itself and never goes away. I mean, it's very effective. He couldn't have done these songs using the kind of high tenor, the
reedy Ziggy voice.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have worked with these songs, certainly. And it's almost like his material adjusted. He sort of adjusted it to fit this new vocal range he was using.
Diamond Dogs was also a product of material necessity. By the end of 1973, Tony DeFries's Main Man organization, there they are again, had become a colossus of extravagance. Its American division now retained over 20 employees and had moved into palatial premises on New York's Park Avenue. Everything from the Dom Perignon and the Bloomingdale's expenses accounts to the custom-made gold-tip Main Man matchsticks was being paid for by Bowie's earnings.
See, that's it. They were, artists were bled dry by these parasites. It's amazing.
Can you imagine renting on New York's Park Avenue and then getting custom-made gold-tip matchsticks? David apparently was heedless of what was being done with his money and was living on a monthly cash allowance and signing everything else to Main Man's credit accounts, which DeFries deducted from his earnings. Meanwhile, Main Man's London office was besieged by creditors. In December 1973, the Chateau de Hérouville began gathering affidavits in preparation for action over non-payment for the pin-up sessions. It was small wonder that DeFries was anxious for the goose to deliver another golden egg at the earliest opportunity. So when you say they couldn't afford it, Dee, I mean, the bailiffs were coming in, basically, in London. At the height of his excesses, Main Man unwittingly sowed one of the seeds of its own downfall. In late 1973, the company's London office took on a young receptionist of French-American extraction. Blessed with an impressive fluency in languages and a hard-nosed approach to business, she would shortly become David's personal assistant and all-purpose fixer, from which position she would play an instrumental role in extracting him from Main Man's clutches when the showdown finally came.
Amazing.
Corinne Schwab, or Coco, as she is known.
Coco, yeah, that's her.
remains Bowie's personal assistant to this day. Can I get a background check on Corinne Schwab, please?
Yeah, she was there. She was with him, I think, for the rest of his life. And he needed her. I mean, people have no idea how much artists were taken advantage of. And as someone says, how much money was going up David's nose? I mean, this was really the beginning of that. His disastrous romance with cocaine didn't really start until sort of the Diamond Dogs tour. That was when he really got into it. So it was slightly before that, the recording of this. I mean, he was certainly using other drugs, but but nowhere near the quantity they used after Diamond Dogs released.
I'm looking into
doing a check, yeah.
Her father was a man called Eric Schwab, who was a French photographer and war correspondent who documented the concentration camps of the mid-century Germans. So that's what his background is. He died in the 70s. Don't have much else on. She doesn't have her own page, but he's got one. So as far as I can figure out at this moment. So there we go. But he was known for photographing the unspeakable, quote unquote. Okay, so with all of that said, what do we make of the album? What do you think of Diamond Dogs?
What do we make of the album? Well, as I said, I think of this record as a brilliant hot mess. It's it holds together only barely. I mean, again, it's another one of these where, it's like Ziggy Stardust, you can't really call it a concept album because the concept is so muddled. It's a kind of, as I said, a pastiche of other projects, and it goes in different directions. But I mean, I think that's the thing that I like so much about Bowie is that it's, it isn't a package, it isn't a product. It's it's just a genuine exploration of this, that, and the other thing, and I think through that it really works. And I always really like this record for some reason, even though it's quite grim. It certainly isn't, it certainly isn't a kind of jaunty, uplifting listen. But I was always much taken with it because of again, and you get all the Bowie things, like you get the sort of theatricality, the kind of sort of baroque, overblown qualities of certain of the songs. You get the strange kind of crooner thing going on.
He on Future Legend, which is the spoken opener, he brings back some of his old tricks from the like the Bealey Brothers and the all the madmen, the sinister voices in the background.
Yes,
like when he goes any day now, and then he's weird.
Any day now. Yeah,
there's all these weird vocal overlays. Yeah.
To this day, I can still recite that whole thing. Can I do it, please?
Yeah, go on.
And in the death, as the last few corpses lay rotting on the slimy thoroughfare, the shutters lifted an inch in Temperance Building, high on Poacher's Hill, and red, mutant eyes gazed down on Hunger City. No more big wheels. Fleas the size of rats sucked on rats the size of cats, and 10,000 peopleoids split into small tribes, coveting the highest of the sterile skyscrapers, like packs of dogs assaulting the glass front of Love Me Avenue, ripping and re-wrapping mink and shiny silver fox, now leg warmers, family badge of sapphire and cracked emerald. Any day now, the year of the Diamond Dogs. Yeah.
This ain't rock and roll. This is suicide.
Genocide.
Oh yeah, sorry, genocide. Yeah,
genocide.
Yeah. What a start to an album. This ain't rock and roll. This is genocide.
This is genocide.
Okay.
And of course, this is a third in a trilogy of records that have at their premise a kind of looming or sort of nascent or just occurred apocalypse. I mean, Ziggy Stardust gave you 5 years. Aladdin Sane dropped you right in the middle of it, and this is, again, you get this little epitaph right at the beginning. So it's odd how they're all three kind of views of an apocalypse.
Yeah, so we go from that into the title track. I've never been wild about Diamond Dogs, the song. David Buckley is quite critical of it. He says, musically, this title track was always too long and too slowly paced to cut it as a single. In the UK, it limped, dogged, tired to number 21 in the summer of 1974. The narrative continues with the introduction of the Halloween Jack character. For Hunger City, Bowie had drawn on a story his father, who had worked for Barnardo's Children's Homes, had told him about the visit of Lord Shaftesbury to poverty-stricken areas of London, where he found children in rags living on the rooftops. Hence, Halloween Jack lives on top of Manhattan Chase. Bowie also references Todd Browning, the maker of the then-banned 1932 film Freaks, which is a classic, by the way, if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Really scary as well. The film was populated by actors with real-life freakish deformities, and the name check in the song reflects the circus freak show of the album artwork and Bowie's anthropomorphic transformation. We should probably talk about the cover, D. Shall I get it up? This is where he's the half.
Yeah,
man, half
I've
character.
actually I've put the full painting in that folder. By the way, Manhattan Chase is a building called, I believe it's now called 28 Liberty, but it's still there, and it's a Skidmore, Owings and Merrill building from the 60s, and it's quite a grim, dark tower. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the slightly interesting things to me is that if you remember, I have a video on this channel called "Another Way of Reading 1984," where
yes.
I burrow into the fact that Orwell is not talking about communist Russia or about Nazi Germany in that novel. He's talking about Britain in 1948, and it's he's just switched the, he's made it 1984, but it's 4 and 8 the other way around. And he's actually talking about like the total British state. And I find it interesting that Bowie is now relocating the action to America in a strange way. But he's still very much got London in mind. So, this is not like an apocalypse totalitarianism over there. It's here, or something like that. It's like, well, And later on, I'm still trying to find this. The photos, by the way. Let me try to find them.
It's in, it's still in the.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. I have them here somewhere. I'm just trying to find them. Here we go. Bowie album covers. Where are they? I download so much shit. There's pictures of Penny Mordaunt here that we obviously showed on a screen one day. Here we go. All right. Where is it? So okay, here's the. Okay, and this was pretty. I seem to remember this is quite a famous. Some famous stories behind this album cover.
Yes.
But I also kind of, as we'll get onto with some of the later things, I think this album's attitude towards the regime or the 1984 in itself is kind of interesting to contemplate, because it's not straightforwardly lamenting the coming of the Big Brother, as we'll get onto.
No, if you flip through, I've got the whole painting. There you go. This painting is by I believe a Belgian artist called Guy Paylard, and I think Bowie wanted to do something radically different from his previous record, and he'd done a photo shoot with a dog, like Bowie posing with I think a Great Dane dog, and he went to this artist and he said, "Can you do a painting of me as a hybrid dog for this record?" And so he He did it, and again, it's quite controversial because RCA, the late Bowie's label at the time, of course, they didn't like it, but they printed it. So here's the strange part: is that it was released, and they made an undetermined number of copies, vinyl copies, with the full painting on. As you can see, the painting there, you don't see the genitals, but on the original painting, the genitals of the dog are on full display. And RCA printed
dog's bollocks, yeah.
Yeah, dog's bollocks, yeah. And they printed it. And then at some point they said, wait a minute. On the other side of the gatefold, we've I don't know how I didn't notice that someone had censored this fucking picture. That's really disappointing that I didn't notice that. I should notice the bollocks. But anyway, so RCA, strange enough, they did press a number of copies of this with the full painting uncensored, and they were sold. And then they realized there were bollocks on it, and they airbrushed them out, and all the subsequent copies had this sort of censored version. And that record, that vinyl record with the uncensored genitals, is one of the most expensive sort of mass market bits of vinyl that you can have. I mean, that record is worth thousands and thousands of pounds if you ever find one which you own.
Looking at it now, you can see the freaks element. You know, strangers living atrocities, and clearly these are creatures that would not look out of place in Todd Browning's Freaks.
And those are two real freaks. Those are depictions of two real freaks from Coney Island. I can't remember the names, but yeah.
Have you ever been there, by the way? It's one of the creepiest places I've ever been to in my life.
It's very creepy. Have you been there? Did you ride the Cyclone?
Yeah. We went to that fair with a creepy clown everywhere, and I had Nathan's hot dogs and all of it. But it's it's got a kind of edge to it. And I remember, being when I was with my ex-wife at the time, and we also got the impression that we could be stabbed at any moment.
It's a very. I mean, I was there, I don't know, probably in like 1996. It's been a very long time since I was there. But and it's also I don't know anymore, but it was in the midst of a huge sort of Russian kind of expat community. But there were also like very urban people there as well. It was a very weird transitional place. And when I was there was still a decaying wooden roller coaster that most famously appears in Woody Allen's Annie Hall, because in Annie Hall he says that his family, that he grew up living beneath that roller coaster, and it was still standing when I went there. And of course there's nothing as kind of, you know, as kind of textbook creepy as a decaying roller coaster on a littered and deserted beach. But
I remember when I went there, being stuck in a queue, and there was like this American like autist behind us in the queue who struck up a conversation. Hey, you guys from England, man? And then we started talking, and I mean, funny enough, talking about 1984 and Diamond Dogs, he said, hey, I hear it's really like a surveillance state over there, that you can't go anywhere without cameras being on you. You know, that you'll watch wherever you go. It's like George Orwell's 1984. I didn't know what to say to him. I was just like,
amazing.
You know, because what do you do in a situation like that? You're stuck in a queue, so you have to you can't leave, or you just
which is also a scene in Annie Hall. If you remember, he's stuck waiting behind that guy who's talking about Fellini, and then he pulls Marshall McLuhan out from behind a sign and has to deal with anyway. So this picture and the kind of freak show thing.
Oh, all right. So and I should probably show people what he looked like.
Oh,
hold on.
You mean Halloween Jack?
Yeah, the Halloween Jack character.
I mean, that character didn't get much traction. He basically dressed like this for like one or two appearances.
This is one of his least fully fleshed out characters.
Yeah,
Halloween
there's a
Jack.
session with the dog. Yeah, there's a session with the dog.
Halloween Jack is a real cool cat.
Okay, I think I've got one of him with the eye patch and everything.
Is that Zoe Bowie there?
Yes, that is Zowie Bowie.
Zowie
Duncan,
Bowie.
i.e. Duncan Jones. Yeah.
Yeah, he went on to be a director, didn't he?
Yeah.
Was that Moon? Was that the subject of the film that he made?
Oh, I can't remember.
I think it was Moon. Or Man in the Moon, or something like that. Anyway, we go from the title track into, in my opinion, and in the opinion of David Buckley here, the album's high point. But here's the kicker: I've had this book since 1995. So how much of that opinion is David Buckley's? I.e., did he kind of brainwash me into believing this was the high point in the album back then? It's Sweet Thing, Candidate, and then we get a reprise of Sweet Thing.
Yeah.
It's like a kind of block of 3 songs that form a cohesive kind of story, and it's quite a haunting track, I would say.
It is, and his vocal. I mean, again, the vocal stylings in this are brand new for Bowie. It's a suite of songs, and very much in the kind of mold of a real sort of concept record, but it is kind of the core of Diamond Dogs, I would say. It's also worth noting that Bowie used, being his sort of debut as producer, he really used the studio. Like he more than he had. I think prior, with producer having very limited scheduling for the sessions, they were more sort of cut and dried. But I think with this record, he really sort of started to play around. As you can hear on the record, there's all sorts of weird things going on, all sorts of kind of tricks of sound and distortions and amplifications, and more than on the previous records. Even on this song, the lead into this song. Of course, he's using that new vocal range, but it also starts with him slowing the tape, so it's safe in the city, love in a doorway, and then it sort of like gradually goes back to normal speed, but it's a very good.
It's drenched in sax as well. Sex as well, but also
sax and violence.
Saxophone. It's all over and it creates. I don't know. It's very atmospheric. It produces a very particular feel, I guess. So, yes.
And it has a sort of, and it also again has this sort of slightly kind of chanson, kind of Weimar, just the character of it. Boys.
Weimar is a very good descriptor. Very good.
Yeah, this whole record is very Weimar, I would say.
Yeah. According to Nicholas Pegg, Bowie's vocal performance is among his finest ever, achieving spectacularly dexterous swoops between spectral bass and full-throated falsetto howls. Then, from the low-key intensity of its opening, the song shifts gear into Candidate, where densely written cut-ups tumble relentlessly across the rising noise of fuzzy, demented guitars. So he thinks that Bowie is using the cut-up technique already.
Oh, he absolutely is. That is all over this. Should we explain what that is to you?
Yeah, go
the
on.
audience. So, as we talked about, as we mentioned before in the stream, Bowie was he sort of shifted. He ostensibly shifted influences from Orwell to William S. Burroughs, who most famously wrote a book called Naked Lunch, amongst many others. And Burroughs had a technique, a sort of automatic, I would say a sort of automatic writing technique, wherein you would write, you would sort of, over a period of time, you would write lines, sort of, you could write a coherent poem or a song or something like that, and then you would literally cut it up line by line, or even word by word, depending on how you're doing it, and you would put them in literally into a hat and shuffle them, and then pull them out at random and piece them together. And it was very much a kind of, there are a lot of artists doing work like this, sort of automatic. I would say this sort of all comes out of surrealism. The surrealists were very interested in this, because it was this idea that by removing part of the conscious filter, you could get at something that was dwelling in your work, or dwelling in your thoughts, that was being restricted, and sort of by taking intention out of the process of sort of coming up with an artwork, you could sort of get at things that you couldn't otherwise. So it was kind of an attempt at sort of unleashing the unconscious, and so Bowie used that technique quite extensively in this record, and you could sort of tell. We'll get into it in a later song where I think it's most prevalent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the lyrics of Candidate now, and they do kind of make sense. I'm spreading so much fun with the poisonous people, spreading rumors and lies and stories they made up. Some make you sing and some make you scream. Some make you wish that you'd never been seen. But there's a shop on the corner that's selling papier-mâché, making bulletproof faces, Charlie Manson, Cassius Clay. If you want it, boys, get it here thing. I mean, it kind of...
and it does sort of work. But then you get the next line. So you scream out of line, I want you, I need you, anyone out there, anytime. Trey Butch, little number wines, hey, dirty, I want you. When it's good, it's really good, and when it's bad, I go to pieces. I mean, there's just a sort of kind of collisions of things there. Well, on the street where you live, I could not hold up my head, for I gave all I had in another bed, on another floor, in the back of a car, in the cellar of a church with the door ajar. I mean, there's a sort of slight, I would say, logical leap that happens between some of those lines that seems a bit odd, I mean, it certainly all makes sense and it all fits, but I would say that you can sort of tell that you're getting a slight fracturing. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but
I will say that I found it. I always thought it was cool the way this song, the Candidate bit of the song, comes in, and then like the sweet thing comes back, the sax comes back in and stuff. That's kind of a cool moment on the album, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of wonderful sounds in this. Also, I think we forgot to mention, Sweet Thing is one of those Bowie songs, like Fantastic Voyage, where there's just this unbridled moment of pure music theater. If you remember when he says, I'm in your way and I'll steal every moment. Just completely over the top, which is wonderful.
It is one of his best vocal performances. It is.
Yeah, and I think just again the contrast from how that song starts and the way his voice progresses through it up to that moment of just complete a release, is amazing. It's very good. It's very good. This suite of songs is very good.
So we go from this to Rebel Rebel, yet another single I've never been that keen on. His last bona fide glam single. It was a UK number 5 hit in early 1974. According to Buckley, it's a superb riff from Bowie. I mean, it is a good riff on Rebel Rebel. Guitarist Alan Parker having helped him shape its contour in the studio. This is definitely another mini manifesto for all the Bowie boys and Bowie girls who are one of the most conspicuous aspects of pre-punk youth culture. And the lines, "You got your mother in a whirl, she's not sure if you're a boy or a girl," sum up early 70s gender bending perfectly. Bowie performed a mime version of the song for Top Pop in Holland in pirate chic with an eye patch and a neckerchief.
That was the famous Halloween Jack look for one performance.
And then, I mean, any thoughts on Rebel Rebel?
It's all right. I mean, again, it sounds like out of a different universe than some of the other songs on Diamond Dogs, but it's certainly a memorable song. I think it's probably one of the most covered Bowie songs. Yeah. There's millions of cover versions of it.
I don't like the lot. I do not like the line "Hot Tramp, I love you so." So,
Hot Tramp.
Yeah,
I like the line. You've got your transmission and your live wire. You've got your cue line and a handful of lewds. You want to be up there when they count up the dudes.
I wonder if anybody really, if those mothers and fathers knew what he was on about when he's talking about a handful of lewds.
I wonder.
All right, so we go from that to Rock and Roll with Me, a song that I actually forgot existed until today.
Wow.
What do you think of this one?
I quite like this one. There's a certain menace. There's a certain slight menace to this song. Even though, again, this was, I believe, one of the songs that he had written for that musical of Ziggy Stardust and didn't use. But there's a slight weirdness to this song. I mean, even the first, always were the one that knew. They sold us for the likes of you. I always wanted new surroundings, a room to rent while the lizard lay crying in the heat, trying to remember who to meet. I mean, there's just a weird edge to this.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the listing of the songs now, I'm thinking he basically had 3/4 of a concept album and then shoved these two songs in the middle of it, Rebel Rebel and Rock and Roll with Me. Because if you think, like the Sweet Thing Candidate, Sweet Thing reprise,
yeah,
and then we go 1980, We Are the Dead, 1984, Big Brother, Chant of the Ether, Circling Skeletal Family. All of those songs work together, and then you've got like Rebel Rebel in the middle of it. So, and this song in the middle of it. So.
It is very out of place. But I think it's a little less out of place than Rebel Rebel as far as I'm concerned. But anyway.
So then we go with We Are the Dead, which for a long time was my favorite song on this album.
Yeah.
And
which I strangely enough used to love this song.
Yeah, we talk about that Bowie voice. This song's got a lot of Bowie voice on it, I would say.
Bowie voice on it, yeah.
Yeah, it's the way he sings like Today, and I can't do it because I can't do Bowie voice, but yeah, I was very into that when I first got this album. And
Today I looked at you. And there's the falsetto and then the dip back down into the low range.
Yeah, it's the mixture of the high voice and the low voice, basically.
Yeah.
And this, this is basically the story of the kind of love. It's my least favorite bit of 1984, really, the love story between Winston and Julia. I would prefer 1984 if there was no resistance narrative whatsoever. But it is kind of cool that basically Julia's a fed at the end of the day. So, she's literally, that's her job. She's a professional fed.
So miserable.
I don't know. It's always been my dream to have a dystopian fiction with no resistance narrative whatsoever in it. We just watch the cold, banal machinations of a bureaucratic state taking over, we don't need a film because that's our lives, ladies and gentlemen. That's our lives.
Exactly. You want a dystopia with no resistance. We're living in it.
Yeah, we are the resistance, D. We are the dead. Me and you.
We are the dead. Yeah. Something kind of hit me today. I looked at you and wondered if you saw things my way. So this song also is the most cut uppy of any of the songs. This is where you really notice it. Let me just read a bit. Yet now we feel that we are paper choking on you nightly. They tell me, son, we want you. Be elusive, but don't walk far. But we're breaking in the new boys. Deceive your next of kin. For you're dancing where the dogs decay, defecating ecstasy. You're just an ally of the leecher, locator for the Virgin King. But I love you in your fuck me pumps, and your nimble dress that trails. Oh, dress yourself, my urchin one, for I hear them on the rails. Because of all we've seen, because of all we said, we are the dead. I mean, that is a that's a very weird collection of words there.
Also, the vocal performance on that particular bit that you just read is mental. Yet again, it's kind of so dramatic and so.
It is.
It's where he does the slightly teetering on the edge of insanity type stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
There's even a little bit of the 5 years screech that comes in.
And there's a lot of studio magic going on in this as well. Look, with different bits of processing and different microphone perspectives and such. I suspect they were doing.
And then we have pretty much a run of songs that, in my mind, just go together, which is 1984. It's actually, I always thought it was Beware the Savage Yaw of 1984, but it's actually Beware the Savage Jaw of 1984. Jaw.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know.
I think I thought it was More at one point. Beware the Savage More of 1984, but it's Jaw. Yeah. This song is also like a weird quasi-funk disco number from hell.
It's almost disco. It's almost disco.
It's one of those songs. Yeah, I mean the wah-wah pedal used very extensively on this, which I think they put in later on. They recorded this song well before the other songs on the record, and then I think it was reworked and added the wah-wah. So
Buckley says in 1971 Isaac Hayes helped kickstart what later became known as disco music with his theme tune to the film Shaft, which is such a bizarre influence on this album. But here we go.
Can you dig it?
Alan Parker's guitar licks borrow heavily from that track's guitar work, and together with some on-the-button Philly strings, provides the clearest clue yet of his upcoming disco phase. The song was covered by the resurrected Tina Turner on her Private Dancer album.
Yep, it's on Private Dancer.
A bizarre choice of song for that most middle-of-the-road solstices, filled as it is with gloomy predictions of the future of mankind. So,
well, people say that, but Tina Turner was, she was quite an interesting character. She sang backup on a Frank Zappa record in the early 70s on a apostrophe overnight sensation, the Tina and the Ikettes. I mean, there's literally a song about moving to Montana and farming dental floss with your pygmy pony, and it's fucking Tina Turner, and they're amazing. The backup music for that that record was very, very difficult to perform, and she did it beautifully.
Do you know that Tina Turner turns up on Tonight?
No,
she's
I didn't
literally
know that.
There's a duet with Tina Turner on Tonight.
Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, probably because I think I listened to Tonight once.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Tina Turner is on Tonight, which was also released in 1984. So, yeah, and there are kind of rumors and innuendos that are, they may have done a bit of a kinky backstage or whatever. But,
ooh.
And
don't forget Tina being in that film. What is it?
Beyond the Thunderdome or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Master Blaster. Do you remember?
God's sake.
I remember Dr. Dre is on the soundtrack of that. And there's a video set in the Thunderdome of a Dr. Dre video from the Chronic. It's bizarre. Okay.
Amazing.
So anyway, Tina Turner, whose strange connection with David Bowie.
And Zappa.
So we go from Tina Turner was also a bit of a kind of feminist icon in the 80s because her husband beat her up, basically. She will survive, so.
Yeah, some people with a Colonel Crayon. Tina was Ike's greatest hit.
Oh, God's sake.
Awful.
Then we go from 1984 to basically the closer, Big Brother, and one of the strangest songs he'd ever release, "Chant of the Ever Circling Skeletal Family." And I'll never forget when I was a teenager, when I'd have that song and my dad would just come in, "What the fuck are you doing? What is this?" He'd be just turn that off. You're scaring the neighbors,
Lol.
Because it was it's the bit at the end, bra, 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 bra. It's like is your CD on the bounce,
Well, I believe on the original vinyl, so this is one of the few I don't have a vinyl copy of, but I seem to remember that it was engineered so that the needle would get, the last groove was locked, so that it would literally do that forever. If you left it go, the needle would get into that last groove and just go bra 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 bra. But I'm not entirely sure about it. It may have just been an effect they did, but
Don't
talk of dust and roses.
There's some very Bowie vocals on this one.
It's very.
But okay. Bearing in mind that 1984 is a straightforwardly anti-totalitarian novel. What is going on here? Please, Savior, show us. Hear me, I'm graphically yours. Someone to claim us. Someone to follow. Someone to shame us. Some brave Apollo. Someone to fool us. Someone like you.
I love
we
that.
want
I love
you,
that.
Big Brother. I mean,
someone to claim us.
This isn't just like looking and saying, "I love you, Big Brother." This is like an actual hymn in worship of Big Brother. It's kind of dark.
A hymn to Mark Brahman. Some brave Apollo.
This is literally something that Mark Brahman could cover. Because there's a way to take it there. He's doing a song version of that moment at the end of 1984 when Winston is broken and defeated and just says, "I love you, Big Brother," to the TV.
Yeah, but it's not a big triumphal moment. I mean, it's a weak, quiet, low moment. So, it's not a big show tune.
Bowie turns it into almost a kind of, I hate to say it, like a kind of Nazi march. There's a kind of hint as to what would come on Station to Station with this song, I would say.
Yes. We want you, Big Brother, Big Brother.
Let me just read what David Buckley says about this song, in which Bowie returns once again to the idea of the strong man, the homo superior, as a means of salvation, this time taking on the Big Brother of Orwell's novel, whose totalitarian grip was ultimately absolute. It was this fascination with Superman of one persuasion or another, whether it be his own fictionalized rock personae or the figures of myth, legend, philosophy, through an interest in Nietzsche, or novels, which would culminate in Bowie's own delusions of grandeur during his flirtation with Nazi chic 2 years later. With hindsight, we can all see it coming. Whatever, Big Brother is a daring, insistent, somehow frightening paean to the super god, and the way in which it segues into Chant of the Ever-Circling Skeletal Family, a truly mesmeric and frightening chant in 5/4 time, is one of the greatest moments Bowie has committed to tape. So that's what he says. Do you agree with that?
I don't know about the greatest moments, but it is wonderful. The transition from that slightly manic song to skeletal chant. Yeah. That song it's so strange, and it's also there's a hint of kind of, it's not polyrhythmic, but there's a hint of kind of sort of techno African, which became a very popular thing in the late 70s and 80s. Certainly think of the Talking Heads and some of those songs, Zimbra and others, where they were kind of toying with African kind of rhythmic structures.
It's just striking me now just how mental Big Brother is as a song. He's literally like, "Give me steel, give me steel, give me pulsars and real." Mental.
It is really manic and mental. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts on?
Please, Savior, show us.
I mean, it is. I'm not really getting the condemnation part of the. It doesn't. It seems to be,
no.
He's leaning into the idea of being up for a totalitarian strongman. So you make of that what you will. But then we get quite an unexpected shift on the next album. Am I still sharing the screen? Let me see if I can find the front cover of this one. There he is.
There he is. We need to mention there's something that happened between Diamond Dogs and Young Americans, which is a record called David Live.
Oh God! All right, here we go.
Which may be one of his worst records. I don't have the cover of David Live in there. I should though.
Images from him from this time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what he was looking like.
Yeah, he looks a lot better in that one though. What was that quote that I found on the? What did he say? Bowie later commented that David Live was the final death of Ziggy, and that photo on the cover, my God, it looks like I've just stepped out of the grave. That's actually how I felt. That record should have been called David Bowie is alive and well and living only in theory.
Let me just get the cover of the album out because he looks absolutely awful on the front of this album.
Yeah, talk about skeletal. And we should say that the tour of Diamond Dogs was really influential. The tour of Diamond Dogs, it cost for the time a fortune. I think it was like £250,000 or something like that. And it was full of all sorts of stage, all sorts of huge set pieces and things. He's lowered down in a chair, and there's all sorts of trickery.
Yeah,
in that.
I mean, I think this was the period where he was down to about 7 stone.
Yeah.
And I think this is not too far removed from the time that he would do Man Who Fell to Earth, because there's a famous scene in Man Who Fell to Earth. When they have the whole sex scene with a gun where they're pointing the guns at each other?
Yeah.
Do you remember she literally carries him?
Yeah.
In a like as you would carry a girl across the altar type thing. She carries him. And I mean, presumably they did that in real life, and she's not exactly the biggest woman in the world. That probably shows you how light he was at this time.
Yeah, I mean that was actually like a year and a half later than this. I mean, this wasn't even the worst of it, David. This picture. So, yeah, it's.
Shall I see if there's any lore for David Live in this book? It does have an entry.
Yeah, you can. But I was just talking about a little bit about the Diamond Dogs tour, which became very influential on many other things. I mean, all the big kind of 90s, like, sort of set piece based concerts like U2 and Madonna, and or even things like Kanye West and things where they do these huge elaborate set pieces. I mean, David Bowie sort of started that with both the Diamond Dogs tour and then the Glass Spider, which was another tour that he did after.
Yeah, I mean, apparently it was a really good tour, despite this record being shit. It a lot of the things just say it doesn't capture how good the show was.
It's apparently very, very good, and it shifted tone. I mean, sort of halfway through, he removed most of the big set pieces and started to do a lot of the Young Americans material. But from what I heard, I don't even remember this. I maybe have listened once, but he's just off key and it sounds awful.
Yeah, in Melody Maker they wrote David is hoarse, throaty, and often off key, outright artifice and self-parody, basically. So, yes. But anyway, it's around this time that he makes a shift, basically, to become plastic Philly soul man. So we've seen he becomes this incarnation of Bowie, which is there he is, still very thin, but now he's doing like soul man stuff and has left rock and roll behind. It's a kind of light disco soul infusion type thing, isn't it?
Yeah, with a bit of funk thrown in. I have to say right off the bat that I don't like this record, and I almost never listen to it. I mean, even though it has some very well-known songs on it, and there's nothing wrong with it at all, but it just is as personal taste. I just don't like it at all.
Well, according to Peg, Bowie said in 1976, a year after making it, "I thought I'd better make a hit album to cement myself over here, so I went and did it. It wasn't too hard, really." So he purposely designed this album to break the American market. And as we talked about last time, that worked, because even now, if you go to America and hear Bowie on the radio, it's invariably Golden Years or Young Americans or Fame, which are all from this album. So, yes, they were in Philadelphia when this was made. It's significant because it's they bring in a few Bowie mainstays around this time, people who would stick around. Earl Slick on guitar, for example. Carlos Alomar is probably the most significant addition. But there is other people as well.
There's other people, including Luther Vandross, who was a very famous R&B.
Luther Vandross was discovered through this album.
Yeah,
he co-wrote. Was it Win or Fascination?
Was it Fascination? I think it was Fashion. Yes, it's Fascination. And one John Lennon is also on this record.
Oh yeah, John Lennon co-wrote Fame.
Co-wrote Fame and sings backing vocals for it. So,
and he co-wrote Across the Universe as well.
Well, I mean that's a Beatles.
Well, I mean with Paul McCartney.
With Paul.
It's a cover, But I was saying there's a Lennon cover on it.
The words are floating in and out. Yeah.
So, there are some interesting elements to this. To this record. One is the massive shift in the sound from what we've just been listening to. There's a bit of disco on the 1984 song, right? But nothing could have possibly prepared people for this, surely. Bearing in mind this comes out, less than a year later? This is March 1975. Diamond Dogs was April 1974, so 11 months later, and it's just a completely different sound, different image. Yes. So there's that. It took me a while. I will admit, it took me a long time to get into this album. And it didn't click with me for a good many years. Much like you, D, it was never a favorite of mine. But I was watching something that used it on the soundtrack. They used like Young Americans on the soundtrack. I'm trying to remember what film that was now. I want to say it was that Al Pacino film, Dog Day Afternoon. That also has like Elton John on the soundtrack. Was it that? I'm trying to remember what film it was. But it led me to really get obsessed with the title track. And then I reassessed the whole album in the light of that and actually came to like it a good deal. But yeah, I would say it's not one of the ones that clicked with me immediately. Let me just see if I can find out what
yeah, I don't know
what track, what film that was that uses Young Americans.
It's fine. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article. Sanford adds that while many British rockers had tried and failed to experiment with black musical styles, Bowie was one of the first to succeed. Well, that's not true, because like half of the British, half of the kind of late 60s, early 70s. I mean, the Rolling Stones, certainly, Led Zeppelin. I mean, they were all doing. I mean, even fucking Jethro Tull were doing kind of weird, weird anodyne Delta blues stuff. So
you'll never believe the film it was that got me back into this album. D.
What was it?
Dogville by Lars von Trier.
Really?
Yeah.
Dogville?
Yeah, the end credits of Dogville have Young Americans. Has Young Americans on the over the. And
oh yeah. He puts a lot of weird. Yeah. Well, speaking of Jethro Tull, there's a weird Jethro Tull song in one of Lars von Trier's films, Breaking the Waves. So yeah, he's got some very odd musical choices.
So I don't know when that film came out, but that gives you an idea. Yeah, 2003. See, so that's pretty late in my fandom.
Very late for you.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's just very quickly go because we want to cover station to station as well. We've already been going long. But the title track, Young Americans.
Going long? No, we're not. It's an hour 25.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Young Americans, I would say, is a good song. Really, really fun.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a weird thing is that you have to kind of set it apart from all the rest of Bowie. So when I was in the height of my fandom, I was trying to listen to it in the context of everything else. Whereas when I was watching Dogville years later, it kind of hit me differently, if that makes any sense. And I just listened to it on its own, like apart from the rest of Bowie, if that makes any sense. And I don't know, it's a song that you can get into, Young Americans. It's long, but it's kind of funky. And, it's... Let me just pull the lyrics up a second.
Yeah, very long song. Yeah, I'm looking at them now. They pulled in just behind the bridge. He lays her down. He frowns. Gee, my life's a funny thing. Am I still too young? He kissed her then and there. She took his ring, took his babies. It took him minutes, took her nowhere. Heaven knows she'd taken anything but all night. Yeah.
He was a young American.
Vagabond.
I think what it is that I was also very much into around that sort of time, around 2003, was around the time that I did a lot of my travel in America as well, and I was really into my Americana and my burgers and my idea of like the 50s and stuff like that, which is something I've not really talked that much about, but it's something that I think we explored it on the Andy Warhol streams, kind of how much I was into Americana stuff. And this album and this song in particular is just dripping with the idea of America and like if America can be something again, or if it can rediscover itself. She cries, where have all Papa's heroes gone? There's a name check of do you remember your President Nixon? Do you remember the bills you have to pay, or even yesterday?
This song. Go on. Sorry.
Okay, carry on, D. Sorry.
I was going to say Bowie has this. I would say career-long love-hate relationship with America. I mean, there are a lot of Bowie songs. Notably that one called "I'm Afraid of Americans."
Yes.
I would say this is kind of the most kind of cynical. I think this record has a lot of very cynical takes about America. Certainly, this song does.
And you see, there are, once you get into the idea that it's Bowie doing this Plastic Soul, the performance is actually like, ain't there one damn song that can make me break down and cry, but like insanely theatrical delivery on that line, where he's literally, you can imagine him breaking down and crying, but like at the same time completely plastic. So there is this kind of dual, and once you see it in that way, there is an element of this album that works because there's a strange like Christian theme on the album as well, of where he's looking for a savior, he's looking for a religion, he's looking for he's looking at somebody up there, as he says on Somebody Up There Likes Me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in the background there's the kind of like TV huckster evangelist kind of snake oil salesman in the background as well. If that makes sense, yeah. Whereas that the the religion, but also that other side of America where it's somebody selling you something. Does that make sense? So it's not like a straightforward, oh, now Bowie's found God. It's like, well, yeah, but he's done it in this curiously like American plastic context as well.
And I think that continues into Station to Station as well, quite explicitly.
So I mean, yeah, there's a win. I mean, I will say that there are periods where this album gets a bit dull for me. I like Win because there's some, again, Bowie voice on it. He goes really low, really low.
Yeah.
All you got, and then he win. I mean, it's a note that I can't reach, but in fact, he hits that same note on Iggy Pop's "Lust for Life" on the song "Some Weird Sin." If you ever listen to that, it's the same. Mm-hmm. It's the same low note that he hits. So I've always liked Win for that. Fascination I find kind of dull. Right, I find kind of dull as well. Yeah. Somebody Up There Likes Me is an interesting song, but he's talking about somebody up there liking him. But if you see what he's saying, he's the savage son of the TV tube. Planets wrote the day was due. All the wisest men around predicted that a man was found who looked a lot like me and you. Yeah, everyone could sense. Everyone with sense could see. Nothing left his eye unmoved. He had the plan. He had to use. Oh, he's so divine. His soul shines. Breaks the night. Sleep tight. Somebody up there. His ever loving. But to me, I'm also seeing like the kind of faith healer in this. I mean, maybe I'm wrong to see that there. Maybe it's more sincere than that. But I get the sense of the those giant churches they have in America where the people are trembling and they're doing the laying on hands and things like that. So that's what I've always got from this theme on the album, if that makes any sense. So
I think that's certainly a valid take.
And then the cover of Across the Universe is kind of neither here nor there, I would say. The sax on that previous song is really good as well. I think of it. Can You Hear Me is...
Oh, yeah, that's... I forgot to mention David Sanborn, who's quite famous sax player. I think that's him on the record. He's certainly on the record.
Yeah, Buckley says about Across the Universe, Lennon himself commented during their impromptu recording sessions that he was puzzled by Bowie's choices of Beatles cover. Regarding the 1970 original from Let It Be, to be unrealized, this overwrought version has actually stood the test of time well, and and the powerful playing and overall air of invulnerability seems to capture Bowie 1975 vintage with an unerring and unforgiving eye. A few months later, a troubled Bowie would talk cryptically of the necessity of a new Hitler figure. This cover, like many of the songs on Young Americans, seems to obsess about super confidence. Nothing's going to change my world. The track played out the cover of the end titles of episode 2, fittingly called Stardust, of the 2011 documentary Wonders of the Universe by Professor Brian Cox.
Oh, God.
So there we go. And then there's Can You Hear Me in Fame, which was Bowie's big breakthrough single. And I've always quite liked it as a song. I don't know what you think of Fame. It's catchy.
Oh, no, I like Fame, yeah. It's probably my favorite track from this record. And I believe that John Lennon's contribution is going, Fame! I think that's him doing all the high Fame retort in the back.
If you can track it down, there's a kind of interesting remix of Fame called Fame 90, which has got one of the coolest Bowie. It's got one of the coolest Bowie videos where he's.
Yeah, I remember. I think I rewatched that because you mentioned it in the past.
He's got like a kind of Japanese girl on there, and he's doing like weird dancing.
Yeah.
It's just it's a cool video. So I'll see if Peg has got any flair on fame before we go on.
Fame. Brian Cox, the science nerd, to answer the chat.
Yeah, not the original Hannibal Lecter.
No.
Okay.
But the riff on Fame is also really contagious. Yeah,
and it's kind of weird that he doesn't really get back to that until Let's Dance. Really, that kind of. I mean, we can. There's a bit of it on Station to Station, but that like kind of pure funk.
Yeah.
Like I mean, where he literally brings in the chic producer.
Niles
Rodgers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, another person who shares my misgivings about this record was David Bowie himself. I didn't know this. Bowie expressed mixed statements about young Americans through his lifetime. In late 1975, he described it as the phoniest R&B record I've ever heard. If I ever would have gotten my hands on that record when I was growing up, I would have cracked it over my knee. He would further voice his dislike for the record and describe it as, quote, a phase in a 1976 interview with Melody Maker. Bowie would later reverse his stance in the 1990s, speaking to Q magazine. I shouldn't have been quite so hard on myself because looking back, it was pretty good white, blue-eyed soul. Yeah, I mean, he often changed his mind about these things, but I don't think I would have cracked it over my knee, but it again, just never quite clicked with me.
Yes, white, blue-eyed soul. Yes. Okay. Shall we move on to Station to Station?
Yeah. So there's a bit of lead up that I think we need to mention about Station to Station. First of all, Bowie, as I said, during the Diamond Dogs tour, he started to use cocaine quite heavily, and that increased during this period, and reached its sort of apex with in the middle of Station to Station, or slightly afterward. One of the things that prompted this sort of, I would say, acceleration of Bowie's drug habits and mental instability were that Nicholas Roeg offered him a role in the film The Man Who Fell to Earth.
That's a shot from it there, isn't it?
Yes, that's a shot from it there. And Bowie had to move to Los Angeles to be in the film, and I think that was really the key, because at this time Los Angeles was a very druggy place, very, very druggy place, especially for cocaine. In fact, let's see. Bowie described living in LA. There's an underlying unease. You can feel it in every avenue. I've always been aware of how dubious a position it is to stay here for any length of time. 3 years later, he would tell New Music Express that the city should, quote, be wiped off the face of the earth.
Having been to LA, I actually agree with him.
I agree with him as well. I was just going to say, I've been to LA and I absolutely hate it. It's a terrifying place.
Oh,
there's something very dark about LA. I don't know what it is. I mean, it's funny because there's lots of films, and even lots of. I mean, if you remember, I remember reading what are these old? Was it Raymond Chandler? There's some stories. He wrote a lot of those stories about LA, and it really captures that strange, ever-present darkness. I mean, of course, because the face of LA is eternal sunshine and Hollywood.
one thing I have to say is that Hollywood strip is a shithole. It's a horrible place.
It's a horrible
with the Chinese theater and the the what do they call it, the Walk of Stars or whatever.
Yeah,
it's just relentlessly horrible place. I just don't get it. It's like, I mean, I'm talking like, I don't know. I imagine Milton Keynes is nicer to visit than
lowest.
It sounds ridiculous, but it's. But it also, I mean, one of the things I remember about being in LA is that, like, just the process of, I don't know, getting a coffee or something. Everybody's watching each other and posing, and it is a relentlessly horrible place. One of my least favorite places I've ever been to.
Same, absolutely. David. In fact, I think a lot of the kind of tone I felt with LA, David Lynch perfectly captures. I think like Lost Highway, who Bowie did the title song for, and Mulholland Drive. There's a lot of that. I don't know what it is. Death, evil in the air.
Probably my favorite place in LA was that weird beach. What's it called? Venice Beach or whatever.
Venice.
Where literally we went and watched like people jump on glass for our amusement. Just like freaks.
Yeah, there's a lot of freakishness.
Drugged out their mind, and we just would watch a tramp jump on glass, and everybody watches. Then he puts out his cap for money, and everybody walks away. So what the fuck did I just witness here? This is like the end of the earth. This place. But anyway, there's a bit of quotations from Bowie around this time, because, like you said, he's living in LA to do the Man Who Fell to Earth stuff. Angie Bowie is on the sidelines. She occasionally helps out to pick up the pieces during the depths of David's drug dependency, but the end of the marriage was now only a matter of time. Coco Schwab is she finds him a house in Stone Canyon Drive. Ava Cherry, meanwhile, had departed for Trinidad following a quarrel. So there we go. So she is out of the picture. May 1975 had seen an abortive collaboration in LA with Iggy Pop, and there are unreliable rumors of uncredited contributions to recordings by Mark Bolan and Keith Moon during the same period. In April, however, Bowie had famously announced his departure from rock music. "I've rocked my role," he said. "It's a boring dead end. There will be no more rock and roll records or tours from me. The last thing I want is to be some useless fucking rock singer." Later in the year, he declared that rock music had been emasculated by absorption into mass media, leaving it dead. "It's a toothless old woman. It's really embarrassing," he said. Those who remembered as far back as 1973 knew that such statements were always subject to retraction, and in this case, the retirement lasted 6 months.
Of course. Yeah.
So, yes, and the Station to Station was the result, basically, of that. Now, there are some different, before we get to it, there are some different influences on this, because Kraftwerk are looming, basically, in the back.
Yeah.
I would suggest.
I mean, Kraftwerk and Krautrock, like Neu and the Cluster and Can and all of those, certainly in the background. And in fact, I believe that Station to Station shows all opened with Kraftwerk song. So
he also met Kenneth Anger around this time.
Bad news.
Yeah, the author of Hollywood Babylon, whose film Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome was an exploration of the neo-pagan warlock Aleister Crowley, figure who famously attracted the attention of Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page around the same time. A groundless suspicion that Page meant him harm was reportedly another of Bowie's myriad neuroses from the period.
Yes.
David,
So,
yeah. Do you want to?
well, I was just fill in a bit. So Kenneth Anger started as a filmmaker. He made his first film was made when he was a teenager. I can't. Oh God, I should know what the name of it is, but it's basically young lads with burning Roman candles stuck on their genitals. But Anger was a big occultist and pagan. One of the one of the memorable things was that he hated Andy Warhol, and he thought Andy Warhol was literally an incarnation of the devil. And so he used to go to Warhol's house in the 70s and throw red paint on Warhol's doorstep. But Anger was really mental, and obviously, given Bowie's state of mind and his Olympian drug use at the time, it was not the type of character you wanted that he needed in his life, so to speak. Yeah, and yes, Jimmy Page, I think, visited Bowie, and then Bowie gave him a book. I mean, Bowie had obviously been interested in Crowley for a while. He name checked Crowley on Hunky Dory.
Yeah, so I mean, it goes on as to what this kind of led him to. Then
Fireworks. Thank you, Rashomon. That's the famous Kenneth Anger film. Anyway,
it says David embarked on a long trawl through Crowley's magic treatises and texts by Madame Blavatsky and the Armenian mystic Gurdjieff, together with MacGregor Mathes's The Kabbalah Unveiled, and a host of fashionable conspiracy paperbacks on subjects like tarot, numerology, the Golden Dawn's connections with Nazi iconography, Himmler's alleged search for the Holy Grail in pre-war England, and prehistoric visits from spacemen. The contents of this unwholesome melting pot, together with a substantial dose of his alienated man who fell to earth character, Thomas Newton, congealed in the creation of David's latest alter ego, an emotionless Aryan Superman called the Thin White Duke. And this is the Thin White Duke, basically.
Yeah.
Character here. Station to Station marks the precise halfway point on the journey between young Americans and low. There are enough finger-snapping grooves to keep the American market buoyant, but elsewhere on the album prefigures the glacial mechanization of David's imminent European canon. The chilly Teutonic beat of the title track is partially inspired by Bowie's growing enthusiasm for the groundbreaking sounds of the German techno bands like New, Can, and Kraftwerk. So, there we go.
Yeah.
Now, I would probably go on record to say that the title track of Station to Station is one of Bowie's best songs, if not his best song.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree.
It's a top 5 song at the very least of his, and it's long as well, very long.
Yeah, it was 10 or 12 minutes long. Yeah, I mean it's yeah, I mean again another one of these records that's a kind of pastiche of various very disparate influences, because you still got the kind of lingering sort of funk and soul thing. And then you've got this infusion, as I said, of the sort of krautrock and Kraftwerk and techno coming in. And then you've also got this slightly, I'd say there's a slightly kind of proggy overtone to certainly the first track. So, yeah. I mean, and strange, of course, because like every Bowie thing, there's always the kind of seeds of the next thing. I mean, this certainly presages the kind of sojourn to Berlin that was to come.
Yes, I mean, he's pointing towards Germany in more ways than one.
In more ways than one.
I mean, this Thin White Duke character is literally a fascist, basically. And it's not even, I mean, there's been glimpses of this coming all the way through, hasn't there? But, I mean, the title track is, what's it? I mean, it's got like overt cries for a European canon. The return of the Thin White Duke, throwing darts in lovers' eyes. The return of the Thin White Duke, making sure white stains.
Yes, and so White Stains, of course, is the title of a book of poetry by Aleister Crowley. So if you ever want to look into Crowley's poetry,
I don't understand. I have never understood, and probably never will understand. This is where I need like someone like Oliver or someone like that to explain. How does Crowley wrap around to Himmler and the Nazis? I don't get it, because they don't seem like the same thing to me. But yeah,
they're not the same thing, but it was a thread. I mean, I think they were both. I think Crowley sort of, along with other people of that period, the very early 20th century, had sort of resurrected this. I mean, it was also happening in the 19th century. I think Wagner was also a big reason for this. But this sort of resurrection of the northern canon of literature, which had been sort of not lost, but certainly ignored. And it sort of sparked an interest in this. I mean, the Edda and the various cycles from sort of Scandinavian area, and so that had all been reignited. And then I think Crowley sort of injected this with again the Golden Dawn, this theosophy that had also been rising in the period, and it just it was all a kind of I think very fertile ground for people like the Nazis, who were in search of a mythos of their own. I mean, they wanted something that was apart from Christianity, because I think certain of them felt Christianity was tainted with Semitic influences, so to speak, and was entirely of a kind of Middle Eastern or Southern nature, and they wanted something that was a mythology for Germany that would tie them to these northern traditions, and I just think Crowley would have been just a part of that kind of zeitgeist. But yes, you certainly need someone who's more of an expert on these things.
I mean, he does kind of go for it during this bit. I mean, I'll just show you some of the famous pictures. I mean, there is the question of this. Like with everything else that Bowie does. I don't know what the hell's happened to his hand there. What is that? But like with everything else Bowie does, you've got to remember he's playing a character as well, though.
He is. I mean, he's dressed in a black outfit in an open-top Mercedes. But strangely enough, one of the people in that crowd was none other than Gary Newman.
Really? Okay.
Yes, of Gary Newman and the Tubeway Army and Cars and all that. And Gary Newman said that he was there and witnessed this, and that Bowie was indeed just waving, and a photographer with a motorized shutter just took a whole bunch of photographs, and they picked the one from the wave that looked the most like a salute. I've seen there's a very grainy film of that as well, and it doesn't look like a Roman salute to me. But who knows? I mean, certainly Bowie, he must have liked the ambiguity. I mean, and I don't think it was.
Maybe he just liked the fashy look,
Well, yeah, I don't think it was an accident that he rocked up in an open-top Mercedes.
Yes, the lyrics on the title track, at the very least, again, there's this theme of looking for meaning, which has been all the way through all regardless of the character. When he says, "Got to keep searching and searching, and oh, what will I be believing, and who will connect me with love," which has been an enduring theme across every album so far.
Yeah.
But then his answer to that question, "Wonder who Wonder who, wonder when. Have you sought fortune, evasive and shy? Drink to the men who protect you and I. Drink, drink, drink. Drain your glass. Raise your glass high. I mean, this is a kind of, it's getting like Bavarian vibes where you're kind of raising a toast basically to, the men who protect you and I. It's kind
and
of,
there's a very notable shift in the song. Say the beginning of the song is quite lugubrious and plodding and icy, and then that moment the song shifts into this very almost celebratory up-tempo thing.
And if you watch live performances, one of my favorite hobbies, D, is watching live performances of Station to Station in various different times, because he always goes for it in that moment, the raising of the glass. And then he says, it's not the sad effects of the cocaine. It's not the side effects of the cocaine. I'm thinking it must be love. It's too late to be grateful. It's too late to be late again. It's too late to be hateful. The European canon is near. So there we go. Whatever he's talking about is yes.
And this is repeated till the end of the song, basically.
Yeah, I mean, how much of this is performance and how much is genuine, though?
Difficult to say. I mean, again, Bowie was out of his mind. I mean, he said that he remembers almost nothing of this entire period, and he doesn't remember anything of the session of recording of Station to Station. So it's difficult to say that someone. And again, if you read any of the things, I mean, he was, about the sort of stories about him living in the house full of Egyptian artifacts and, drawing sort of occult diagrams on the floor, which is referenced again in Low, by the way. Don't look at the carpet. I've drawn through something awful on it. But living with closed curtains, living on milk and peppers and cocaine, and extraordinarily paranoid.
David Buckley finds the need to disavow. He says, it's Bowie's own sympathy for the devil for the 70s, a godless, desperate record written by a desperate and unbalanced young mind, is how he puts it.
I don't think it's godless, because I think a lot of this record is a broken, empty person trying to find, as you say, meaning, trying to find spiritual fulfillment through various avenues. I remember someone saying that this record is a record of love songs for someone who's never been in love. There is a detachment, and again, I think it's very much the kind of that character he played in Man Who Fell to Earth. I mean, I think a lot of he kept that stayed with him a long time, and fed into this. But I don't think anything is just coincidence. I think he was genuinely it was madness, but I think that there was also something. There's a thread of this that you can find years earlier in his work. I don't think this is just an anomaly. And the things and directions he went in.
Quicksand and Superman, and it's always been there, isn't it? It was coming. Let's just put it that way. There were warning signs.
We should mention first. We forgot to mention in the first part of this song. Here are we. One magical moment, such as the stuff from Where Dreams Are Woven, bending sound, dredging the ocean, lost in my circle. Here I am, flashing no color, tall in this room, overlooking the ocean. Here we are, one magical movement from Kether to Malkuth. There you are, drive like a demon from station to station. So there's a lot packed in that little bit. I mean, Kether and Malkuth are the tail ends of the Kabbalistic tree, the tree of life from the Kabbalah, and you can very easily look it up. It's a very famous sort of image. I don't know a lot about Kabbalah, which is a kind of mystical, esoteric offshoot of Judaic thought. But yes, Keter is the sort of crown, and Malkuth is the earth, the domain of the domain of men. And of course, he's a one magical movement from Keter to Malkuth. Here I am lost in my circle, which of course calls up images of summoning, a magical circle, drive like a demon from station to station. Of course, the sound effects at the beginning of the song, the train, would lead you to think that station to station is a train, but it's also, I think, quite literally referencing the Stations of the Cross, which are sort of scenes from, sort of moments from the Passion of the Christ that are performed as literally moving from station to station, and each station there's an associated prayer. And so I think all of these things were there. And again, it's that strange mix of kind of occultism, teetering on the edge of the white magic and the black magic. This kind of searching for esoteric meaning, in Kabbalah or whatever, and this genuine sort of echo and longing for Christ, which is always present as well.
According to Peg, Bowie has confirmed that the title actually alludes to the Stations of the Cross, the sequence of 14 landmarks on Christ's path to the crucifixion, each a symbolic stopping place for prayer in the carvings of medieval churches. What is less widely understood is that in the maelstrom of spiritual confusion and occultism, which infused his 1975 worldview, Bowie conflates the Stations of the Cross with the Sephiroth, the 10 spheres of creation, which form the basis of the 13th century Jewish mystical system known as the Kabbalah. But that's a kind of BTFO on Buckley, who just dismisses it as God.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous take. And of course, Bowie again being ahead of his time, because it wasn't until the 1990s that vapid, disgusting American celebrities picked Kabbalah up again. I mean, you've ever seen anyone wearing a red thread around their wrist? That's the sort of Hollywood, high ticket regurgitation of Kabbalah. Madonna was into that for a while.
Okay, White Stains, he confirms also, is the reference to Crowley's first book, White Stains.
It's a book of poetry.
The Gnostic myth of the fall that combines sexual, racial, occult, and drug-related significances. So there we go. Yes, I have to say I got a selection of essays through the other day because I needed stuff on Spengler. I noticed that elsewhere in the book there were chapters on Crowley, but I have always just studiously avoided reading about Crowley because it just seems like, seems mental to me. But
I would be very careful. Yeah, I mean, for various reasons. I think if you can do it in a purely academic way, but I would be very careful with some of that because, I mean, as Evelyn warned in treatise of magic, you don't want to fuck around.
My own. Let's just say I saw a documentary once about Crowley, and I just thought, I'm not touching that shit with a barge pole. So
no, he was evil. He was just an evil man in many horrible ways, which we don't want to discuss. But Mr. Crowley, what happened to your head?
Yes,
Mr. Crowley.
The other thing about this album is that it's, once you get past the title track, it only has 5 other songs.
Yeah.
Sorry, 6 other songs. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4.
6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 5 other songs.
No,
Golden.
6.
6 other songs. Okay.
No, 5 other songs. Yeah, there's 6 songs too.
6 songs on the album, and there's 5 left. One of which is the smash hit "Golden Years."
Golden Years. go home. Yeah, which is a very odd song. A very, very odd song.
Can you imagine being an American teenager who picks up Station to Station on the strength of Golden Years and is hit with that title track? What must have they have thought?
What would you have thought?
It's just anyway. What do we think of Golden Years? Funky.
I mean, I like Golden Years, but it's I don't know what to think of it. I mean, it's strange, plopped in the midst of this record, ostensibly about this emotionless, sort of Aryan alien, to have this song, that's the one time.
It does have its own mental Bowie moments, though. Like, don't let me hear you say your life's taking you nowhere. All right. So
gonna touch you in these golden.
Yeah. I mean, it's
and there's a myth that he wrote this song and tried to sell it to Elvis Presley, but I don't know if that's true. But I've heard that, and Elvis declined it.
Elvis declined it.
Yeah.
When did Elvis die, by the way?
1977.
Right. Okay. I was thinking this must have been Burger Elvis at this time, right?
But it was most certainly Burger Elvis.
He's another one for my fat man canon. Elvis.
Yeah.
Fat men are happier, I tell you.
Well, for a while, I don't know that I would describe Fat Elvis as being very happy.
He died doing what he loves, eating burgers.
He died doing what he loves, sitting on the toilet.
Let me see if I can find any stuff. Can you imagine Elvis doing Golden Years?
You can watch that. There's this, if you people will want to look up. I mean, to see how bad Elvis was. I mean, he was just as much of a wreck as Bowie was at the end. But there's one of his little late concerts where he's just completely out of it, sweating
I'd love to see a Burger Elvis version of Station to Station. It's not the sad effect of So I'm wondering if anybody's ever covered that now. It'd look like Frank Sinatra cover of Station to Station.
Sinatra. Should we reveal that little bit of deep?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, go on.
So strangely enough, the recording studio, which I believe is called Cherokee, it was a new studio. It had 24-track consoles, which was state of the art at this time. It was large. It had lots of studios. It was 24-hour. You could book 24-hour sessions. So it was the perfect place for sort of Bowie and the band at this period, because he went into these sessions, unlike all of his previous sessions where he'd written all the songs and they just were working out kind of musical material. But he went into this with almost nothing. He'd written very little, and they basically made most of this album up in the studio. And they were in that studio for quite a long time. They would book very, very long sessions. And this was a very popular studio, again, because it was state of the art for the time. And apparently one of the people recording at the studio at the time was Frank Sinatra, who was present for some of the sessions for Station to Station. And apparently heard Bowie record Wild is the Wind from this record and told him how much he liked it. He said it was really great and he should use it. And so Bowie actually put that song at the end of the record because Sinatra told him to. The idea of Sinatra and coked up Bowie.
It must have been such a strange meeting. Wonder what Sinatra made of him. They must have seemed like aliens to each other, I'm sure.
Just complete aliens to each other. Again, Sinatra had seen everything, he's got a very colorful history himself. That's a meeting that you would love to see. Well, I wonder what Bing Crosby thought of Bowie when they recorded that.
Yeah, when they did that little drummer boy.
Little drummer boy.
I mean, one thing I'll say about Sinatra is that I'm convinced. I don't care what anyone says. I'm convinced that he was obviously a gangster. That he had there's no way he didn't have mob connections. Come on,
Sinatra.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, of course he did. Of course he did. That's.
I mean,
well,
So when you say he must have seen everything, I mean, God knows what he is.
There's a joke. There's an old joke. I think Buddy Hackett used to tell it. He said, he said, I was performing in Vegas and Frank Sinatra saved my life. He came in. He said, "Okay, I think that's enough, boys."
There's a wrestling connection with Sinatra as well, by the way, because he was friends with Bruno Sammartino, and whenever they were up in New York and there was a wrestling show on, afterwards, Sammartino would go out with the Rat Pack. So
that's not surprising. Yeah, that seems very logical. Well, I think Sinatra was from New Jersey, Hoboken. Can't remember, but he was certainly in with that crowd, and and Bowie would have loved Sinatra because, of course, very much a kind of the vocal stylings that he was adopting at this period. I mean, this sort of weird alien crooner. I wonder if Sinatra had known who he was prior to the meeting.
Hard to say, because I mean, he must have known him. Must have.
Yeah, I mean, by this time Bowie was a superstar. I mean, young Americans, cemented him as a superstar, I would say.
Yeah, because he not just that, he had the high-profile TV appearances as well. The Cavett show and all the rest of it. So, and he apparently Young Golden Years was played on ABC Soul Train, and Bowie mimed it on the appearance. I've never seen that. Have you seen that footage?
I've not seen that. I'm aware of what Soul Train was, but I've never seen that. No.
Yeah, this came to be regarded as the unofficial video and was used to promote the single worldwide. Golden Years consolidated David's commercial stock in America, reaching number 10. In Britain, hard on the heels of chart-topping Space Odyssey reissue, it made number 8. So there we go. He did indeed offer it to Elvis Presley, according to Peg, but Presley turned it down. Angela Bowie claims that David wrote it in her honor and sang it over the telephone to her, just the way, and this is a direct quotation from Angela, just the way all those years before he'd sung me The Prettiest Star. It had a similar effect. I bought it. The refrain of Angel certainly suggests that she might have been the addressee, although Walk Tall, Act Fine optimism and vow to stick with you, baby, for 1,000 years sits ill with what we know about the marriage already, which was in terminal decline. So there we go. But maybe it was a last-ditch effort to save the marriage.
Perhaps, perhaps.
I mean, doesn't Dylan write a late Sarah song, literally on the eve of their breakup on Desire?
Oh, I don't
think Sarah is on Desire.
I mean, you already written a song calling her an idiot, so I pick up from that.
Imagine writing a love song to her after writing Blood on the
Hey, babe, don't listen to Idiot Wind anymore. Just listen to this one.
Maybe don't record your domestics if you want to keep the marriage together.
Yeah.
So then we get Word on a Wing, which is very different in tone from the previous two tracks. It's a much slower song. It's like a ballad, really. Apparently, around the time he recorded this song, Bowie began wearing a cross as a form of talismanic protection.
Yeah.
And Word on a Wing is in some strange way about this. It's a plea for salvation from a man fully aware that his lifestyles, his obsessions, and his addictions are killing him. Its music is so raw, so vulnerable, and so sad that at times it's almost painful to witness. This is the sound of a young man in total despair. And bear in mind, that's the David Buckley reading of the song. So, yeah.
I don't think that's far off the mark. I often regard this as one of the more personal. I mean, Bowie's not usually really personal in most of his songs. Certainly after a certain point, he stopped sort of writing personal songs. But this one is very, very close to the bone, I would say. I mean, Lord, I kneel and offer you my word on a wing, and I'm trying hard to fit among your scheme of things. It's safer than a strange land, but I still care for myself, and I don't stand in my own light. Lord, my prayer flies like a word on the ring. Does my prayer fit with your scheme of things? It just seems very.
It reminds me of a George Herbert poem. It's the kind of tone of it. If you're familiar with George Herbert at all, because it's in George Herbert poetry, he always makes himself seem like tiny and insignificant against God. It's almost kind of like meek on the side, and there's something of the same way that he imagines himself in the relationship with God here. If that makes any sense.
It's absolutely, and I think it's very clear. I mean, you in this age of grand delusion, you walked into my life out of my dreams. Sweet name, you're born once again for me. And I mean, to me, that's so explicitly not about romance, but it's literally about. I mean, the name, the holy name, holy name of God. It's a very explicit reference, and I think this is very explicitly a sort of spiritual song. A cry amongst the out of the wilderness.
Now, if this is as personal as you're saying, does that mean the Thin White Duke character is kind of dropped in the middle of the record, or? Well, he's only really on Station to Station. That character.
He's only on Station to Station, and I think it's also. I mean, the Thin White Duke character is I think constantly. It is this spirit of longing for anything. It is this person that devoid of transcendence, devoid of emotion, devoid of love. I mean, literally, the first line is "Return of the Thin Light, throwing darts in lovers' eyes." The whole song is filled with these sort of songs about love and longing, and yet, the first line is throwing darts in the eyes. But I do think that part of it is this sort of character yearning to be filled, yearning to have his emptiness filled.
I mean, apart from the thin part, I can relate to a lot of that. It might be the fat white dude, maybe.
Stop it.
No, in a manner that only Bowie can do, he follows up that really poignant song with TVC 15.
Yeah. Talk about not. I don't know how to make sense of this song on the record.
I mean, I've always thought that it was a reference to the scene in Man Who Fell to Earth where he's sitting with all the TV screens in front of him.
Oh, yes, there is that.
And that's why there's this random homage to TVs in the middle of the song, so in the middle of the album. Because Man Who Fell to Earth is on the front cover, right?
It's a still romantic.
And picking up the Peg has the same thought that a more sinister interpretation may have been that the images of mesmeric TV screens prevalent in the Man Who Fell to Earth. But there's nothing ominous about this jaunty, cartoonish confection, which is a jarring burst of exuberance among Station to Station's more anguished moments. Which is true. Apparently, David was told that the song is indebted to a story that David was told by Iggy Pop sometime during 1975's hallucinatory madness about his girlfriend being swallowed by a television set. So it's all a bit David Cronenberg, you could say, but before David Cronenberg was a thing.
Yeah. Well, there's a bit in the song. I brought my baby home. She sat around forlorn. She saw my TVC 15 baby. She's gone. She crawled right in. She crawled right in my TVC 15.
But also, I mean, the TV has swallowed us, swallowed everybody, not just this woman. It's
Yeah, and of course there's the prophetic repetition of transition, transmission. We got transition, and transmission of monkeypox. I don't know.
Yeah, indeed. Stare at that TV screen so long, and they'll make you transition all right. So then we come off TVC 15 to Stay, which is another kind of funky song, isn't it? It's kind of got a funky refrain. If I could remember it correctly, is that right? Am I thinking of the right song?
Yeah. Steve's got a really
Yes. It manages to be, according to Peg, funk, soul, and hard rock all at the same time, showcasing Earl Slick's lead guitar to fine effect against Station to Station's superb rhythm section. The rhythm guitar riff, among the best on any Bowie recording, was created by Carlos Alomar, who tells David Buckley that the track was recorded very much in our cocaine frenzy. So, yes. It's a good song.
Yeah, it's got a great riff at the beginning as well.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, the studio, the having this studio Cherokee studio to work in, I think that Alomar and Slick both say that this, I mean, what they can remember of the sessions for this were absolutely some of the best moments of their career, because, again, he came in with almost nothing, and it was all just pure experimentation and working things out and finding things in the moment. They didn't do rehearsals, so everything was very fresh, and all of these things were just sort of accidents that happened over that period. So I think the freedom was a big part of the sort of feeling of this record.
Yeah, and it does have a bit of that desperation that we were talking about. That this week dragged past me so slowly. The days fell on their knees. Maybe I'll take something to help me. Hope someone takes after me. I guess there's always some change in the weather. This time I know we could get it together. If I did casually mention tonight, that would be crazy tonight. Stay. I mean, it kind of
would be crazy tonight.
Kind of. I mean, it's there are similar themes on "Be My Wife," which is a similarly desperate song on "Low." So
yeah,
this is one of those songs that is looking. It is that bridge between the Young Americans and Low that he was talking about earlier on in some strange way. And then we have "Wild as the Wind," which is the one that Sinatra wanted him to do. Anything about "Wild as the Wind"?
I mean, it's a cover, so I can't remember who wrote it, and it was recorded, been recorded a number of times. The version that I think was the inspiration for Bowie was the one by, oh come on.
It was originally by Johnny Mathis.
Johnny Mathis was, from the 50s. I mean, it's an old song. Nina Simone. Thank you, Dr. Pepper. Yes. Bowie heard Nina Simone's fairly, I think, temporary cover of that. It was probably from around the time of Station to Station. And he was really moved by it. And so that was I think he called this his homage to Nina Simone. And it's a wonderful song. I mean, it's a wonderful performance. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of admired it without loving it. This song,
Yeah,
it's kind of I remember it's got a video where he's very contemplative and there's strings and all sorts of things. I think that video was made later on. It doesn't seem like him from this period. It seems like him when he's older because his hair is darker. Oh yeah. Look, it says it was made into a single to promote changes to Bowie in 1981, and that must be where that video is from, because it's not. It's definitely not Bowie of this period here. So there we go.
Nina Simone's version was 1966. She originally recorded in 59, 66. So it's quite a bit before this. So.
Bowie later commented that this track, among others, comes close to defining his core vocal sound. The big, deep, and full delivery, evident, would continue over the next few albums, making Bowie out as arguably the finest rock singer of his day. And I would agree that, I think Bowie as the vocalist is at his very best in this period we have coming up here. Berlin, but controversially, I think Lodger, Scary Monsters kind of period is his absolute apex as a vocalist. But it's there from this album onwards, really. Actually, it's probably there from Diamond Dogs onwards, but it kind of matures into itself over this time.
Yes, I mean, he being thought of as a notable vocalist, certainly. I think began in around this period.
So that's it. That's another 3 albums covered. And next time, D, coming into one of my favorite Bowie periods, the Berlin trilogy.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, as a coda to all this, he after this he did a tour, which was also very famous. I mean, in fact, I think Bowie said that the tour wasn't called Station to Station, it was something else. But he said it was probably his best show. It was his best staging and his best tour. And it was it was all very white lights. It was lit very starkly and very simply, and it was very much a sort of Weimar film look in terms of the kind of starkness and shadow of it. And there are film clips of moments from this tour, which are wonderful. So people can seek those out. But there was a release much later on of a show of recordings from this tour called Live in Nassau, which I think was around that time with it, 2015 maybe. Which is good. It's certainly better than the impression you get from David Bowie. So, and of course he wanted to get out, and then after that, it was just the end. He just couldn't do it anymore, and he wanted to, he left Los Angeles forever, and went to Berlin with Iggy Pop.
Yeah, but apparently there was a Station to Station tour, according to this.
Oh yeah, no, it was a very famous tour.
Apparently it was called the Station to Station tour.
Oh, really?
Yes. And in fact, there's a little bit in there here about Peg is distancing Bowie from the National Front while this tour was going on, because this was during. I mean, would you agree that the Thin White Duke is Bowie's coolest look ever? One of his coolest looks ever.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
With the slick back hair and the aesthetic that we've talked about, but apparently, according to Peg, much too much has been made of David's alleged far right sympathies during the 1970s, not least by the National Front, who years later, after the controversy, were still trying to claim David for their own irrisible newsletter articles. It was Bowie who horrified the musical establishment in the mid-70s with his favourable comments about the National Front. Bowie, who on the album Hunky Dory started the anti-communist musical tradition with which we now see flourishing amidst the new wave of futurist bands, claimed the National Front's newspaper Bulldog in 1981. In fact, this is Peg, Bowie had never said anything remotely favourable about the National Front. What he had said, mostly a year earlier during his darkest Los Angeles days, was nonetheless naive and irresponsible. In August 1975, he told NME, "There will be a political figure in the not-too-distant future who'll sweep this part of the world like early rock and roll did. The best thing that can happen is for an extreme right-wing government to come. It'll do something positive, at least, to cause commotion in people, and they'll accept it, and they'll either accept the dictatorship or get rid of it." So he did say that, but he didn't praise the National Front. So Bowie had long been interested in the life of Adolf Hitler and had expressed genuine admiration for his media manipulation and stagecraft. "Look at some of his films and see how he moved," he told Cameron Crowe in 1975. When he hit the stage, Peg is not doing a very good job of defending Bowie here. But anyway, when he hit the stage, he worked an audience. Good God, he was no politician. He was a media artist. He would march into a room to speak, and music and lights would come on at strategic moments. It was rather like a rock and roll concert. The kids would get very excited. Girls got hot and sweaty, and guys wished it was them up there. That, for me, is the rock and roll experience. And I have to say, if you've ever watched Triumph of the Will, which I have done for research purposes in the past, there is something kind of weird. Like, you can see what he's saying. There is something euphoric about the way, and it's almost sexual about the way it's shot and the way, the way he moves and the way the crowd is. You can recognize what he's saying.
Yeah, staged and shot by genius Lenny Riefenstahl, and very carefully crafted that. And Albert Speer as well. I mean, they knew what they were doing. They create. I mean, I would say there's some merit to that. I mean, it was a extravagant concert extravaganza. It was a multimedia show.
There's also a bit on the salute here. I don't know why it's all buried in the live stuff. It's not on the station section. Maybe it was because all of this stuff happened during the tour. Maybe. He says on the 2nd of May, the tour finally reached London, where in a well-staged publicity stunt, David arrived at Victoria Station in an open-top Mercedes. He stood up in the car to acknowledge the crowds of fans who had gathered to welcome him back to Britain. And what happened next has been hotly contested ever since. Myth would have it that in front of the assembled posse of photographers, Bowie snapped up his right arm in a Nazi salute. Photographers flooded the newspapers, and at last the proof seemed overwhelming. David was quick to react. He furiously denied that he had made a salute, saying that the photographers had caught his arm in mid-wave. Looking at the photos today, it is patently clear that this is exactly what happened. It's his left hand that is waving, and furthermore, it looks nothing like a salute. "I don't think I'd have done anything as daft as that," he said in 1993. "They were waiting for me to do something like a Nazi salute, and a wave did it for them. The whole episode has, in any case, been puffed up in retrospect. Contrary to the popular assumption, the text beneath NME's famous Highland Farewell photograph, in which David's arm isn't even raised, made no mention of the salute." So there we go. That's the much ado about nothing, really. But he had made those comments. So there we go. And interestingly, The Guardian did not like what was going on. They considered what Bowie was doing more Nazi than futuristic. So there we go. Melody Maker noted that the zeitgeist that Bowie was kind of courting around this time raised echoes of recent controversial comments about fascist rule for Britain. So there we go. So,
yeah, what was
kind
the
of
quote?
interesting.
Britain could benefit from a fascist leader. Quote.
But I mean, the thing is, though, I mean, again, being it's not just the drug part; it's the fact that after courting one crowd by saying you're gay in 1972. What could be more shocking than saying you're a fascist in 1977? 1976. It's like,
I think it all goes together.
You understand what I'm saying, though. It's like, okay, but you have to take all these things with a pinch of salt. I think. I mean, if you look at that photo shoot, okay, he didn't do the salute, but come on,
yeah,
he's literally cosplaying as Hitler.
Yeah.
So. Anyway,
yeah. Also, apparently he was detained in April 1976 by customs in Eastern Europe for possessing in his luggage Nazi memorabilia.
Is that what this shot is from?
No, I think that's something else. Yeah, that's something else. Yeah,
I mean that's clearly from this phase as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
just for being like shit-faced on cocaine or something. So
let's see what that was. Let's see. Nearly 40 years ago, David Bowie was arrested and charged with possession of marijuana in Rochester, New York, leading to what's been called one of the coolest mugshots in history. On March 21st, 1976, was arrested at Americana Rochester Hotel, along with three others, including James Osterberg, better known as Iggy Pop, at 2:25 a.m. following a performance at War Memorial Arena. Yeah, this was during Station to Station tour. 182 grams of marijuana. What?
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Was confiscated from the Rockers' 3-room suite. Yeah. Goodness gracious. So yes, that was from him being busted for pop.
It is, to be fair, quite a cool mugshot. Now that I look at it, because to consider that's real and not like a photo shoot or something, that's kind of, I mean, that looks like something from a movie, not real life.
It does.
And also, looking at this picture, when was it exactly that Bowie picked up his German audience? Did that happen with the Berlin trilogy, or is he like?
Yeah, I think that happened with the Berlin, the Berlin thing. That picture is from Low Heroes days. So.
He looks more like this around this time. So. All right, just a couple of super chats, Steve, before we get out of here. So let's have a look. Just 2, as far as I can see, which is, as I keep on saying, these streams are subsidized by the rest of the by the rest of my activities. D's Bit of Rough says, "Amazing stream, lads. Bowie gets a big woo woo." C123 says, "David Lynch, Deepest Law. When? Do you like Lynch, D?
I like Lynch with some reservations. I think he's done some extraordinary films, and I think he's also done some shite. So, but I'm not enough of a super fan to pull that off. I don't think.
Somebody was going. I think it was Bap who was going on about he's going to do like a real deep dive into Mulholland Drive soon.
Yeah.
Why do people love Mulholland Drive so much?
Mulholland Drive. Oof. I think there's some implications in that film that are quite that are very dark and prescient. I think it's also of a piece with Lost Highway. I think those are both sort of out of the same universe. But have you seen it happen?
I watched Elephant Man when I was far too young, and I was fucking devastated by it.
It's also a very good film.
Eraserhead.
Eraserhead, which I love.
Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet. I showed that to the young people weren't so. Charlemagne hated that film for some reason. I don't know.
Why is that then?
I don't know. They didn't get it. I don't know.
Of course, Bowie crops up in the Twin Peaks movie, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, he's a character. I mean, he's in Fire Walk with Me. Not gonna talk about Judy. Not gonna talk about Judy at all. Yeah, and as I said, he wrote that song for Lost Highway called "Deranged."
Mm. I like the original. I didn't watch the new Twin Peaks, but I like the original Twin Peaks.
I do as well. Even though there's a lot of shit in that, but it's really atmospheric and wonderful. A lot of it. I'm not going near the new one. I hate that sort of thing. Never. Just you can't go back.
Lincoln 94 says, family gave me some Watney's Red Barrel mugs. Didn't know this beer since not from the UK. History seems interesting. Maybe a good topic for the deepest lore.
I don't think Watney's Red Barrel is made anymore.
Well, it must be if he's got some mugs.
They may be old mugs. That's a Monty Python thing. Watney's Red Barrel.
I might do an actual deepest lore on cigars soon. I've been stockpiling D, because I'm getting close to the point where I'm going to define 3 regular cigars.
Ooh.
Where I'm going to get 3 boxes of 25 each. It's going to be a big outlay.
Whoa!
I mean, I'm going to try to justify it as a tax expense on the basis that I present the cigar stream. So if the tax man came knocking, I'd say, well, look, I need these cigars to run my incredibly popular cigar review stream. You know,
is this like Morecar? Is this like inventing Morecar so you can?
Yeah, but I mean, it is. I do have a long-running stream where I review cigars. But I've narrowed it down. I've got 2 out of the 3 for sure. The H. Upmann Connoisseur A is just a wildly brilliant cigar. I had my first one in a couple of years the other day, and it was just amazing. The Hoyo Epicure 2, so it's 2 Cubans, and I've reserved a slot for a non-Cuban. Although I had a Monte Cristo 2 the other day and forgot how amazing they are as well. Very, very, very caramelly stick. But I've got the Davidoff number 2, the signature, which is much talked about. It's a very expensive cigar, but I'm going to maybe try that later on. And I've got these things called Caldwell Eastern Standard. Caldwell are kind of like boutique-y, almost like a hipster cigar brand. But I wasn't that impressed with the first one of those I had the other day. But
I noticed your.
I'm trying to find a third one, and then I'm going to just be like, because you then have to start aging them, you see, D. So a lot of people talk about how you have to like keep, you won't get the best out of an Upmann until you age it for 2 years and things like that. So.
I can't. Yeah.
Don't have the patience, do you?
No, I don't have the patience for connoisseurship of that nature. I mean, perhaps for Bordeaux or Burgundy, but not for cigars.
So, Stella O'Neill says, "Is there a part 3 to the Dylan Deepest Lore?" Well, Stella, no, there isn't. I'm afraid that is being reserved for one of those times where every once in a while something will happen. My guest will pull out at the last minute, or we've just been not organized, and there are weeks on the Deepest Lore which are called filler weeks, and I need to keep back ideas. So Dylan Part 3 is a filler week, but it needs to see off challenges from other filler content, like when I watched the old election footage from what was it 56 election I watched the footage of, and wrestling. This is the sort of stuff that could fill in, but keep super chatting about it, and I'll probably do it at some point, because I'll probably spend an hour just on Love and Theft, because it's one of my favorite albums of all time. and is slept on because it's not 60s Dylan. A lot of people kind of give up on Dylan after Blood on the Tracks, but in my opinion, his late period is probably the strongest late period of any artist I can think of. Pop artist I'm talking about. I mean, I'd compare it with the W.B. Yeats, who also has a really strong late period. I can't think of too many other people who have a strong late. I mean, Shakespeare, obviously, but you know, you don't really think of Shakespeare in that way.
No.
Picasso, maybe.
Yeah.
Does Picasso have a late strong period? Do you?
He has a late period which everyone hated at the time, and which has now come back as being you know now everyone thinks it's genius. So, although, well, I was a bit suspicious. The sort of revisionism of that was because of all the other Picasso periods became too expensive, so they had to sort of rehabilitate that one, so that there were things for people to buy. But I do think there's a lot of strong work in that period, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult work. You certainly would never want to come into Picasso looking at that work.
I'm trying to think of some directors who like strong late, directors who lived to have distinct phases of their period, and it's a real question. But yeah, I mean, I've got, I think Love and the Theft is the album that Dylan always wanted to make, even when he was a young man. And he finally, that's like the fully realized kind of creative vision of what he always wanted to be. I mean, maybe when we get there, kind of Bowie goes out on a bang. I think his late career is generally not that good, but he goes out on a bang.
Yeah.
Certainly not Ric Flair, I'll tell you that much. God. Nick S says, money for Marvel. Idea for Cigar Stream, elite analysis of 1848. There are lessons we could learn about the circulation of elites on a grand scale. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I'd have to do a bit of research on that. Machiavelli Sucks to Go has simply said, a razor head. So there we go.
I just cut them up like regular chickens? Yeah, you just cut them up like regular chickens.
Having been, a first-time father recently, I am now convinced that a razor head is about being kept up by a baby.
A horrible baby.
I mean, because after you haven't been to sleep for like 4 nights in a row, and you're still being kept up on the 5th night, you do enter some strange mental states. And I'm just saying,
I hope it doesn't end up like baby.
I mean, obviously AAA is like wonderful. I would never compare to that disgusting alien. But there is something. There is a kind of weird, delirious state you get into when you're being kept up for 4 or 5 nights in a row.
Fine. In heaven, everything is fine. God, yeah, I thought it was about the horrors of childbirth, but I don't know.
You see, people saying Kubrick. I'm not sure about that, because didn't he make that AI fucking bollocks towards the end? Like,
no. Oh,
wasn't that a Kubrick film?
No, that was a Steven Spielberg film. Yes, Kubrick spent years developing a film called that film, but he never made it, and then Spielberg, basically scooped up the rights after Kubrick died and made that bollocks film. But no, the one that came out had nothing to do with Kubrick other than being loosely based on his ideas. Kubrick's film was originally called Pinocchio. Weirdly enough, his version of AI.
The trouble is, though, Kubrick's body of work is too narrow. In my opinion, it's too slender to truly have that early, middle, and late period that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of works. I mean, you say late period. Well, between 1980, after The Shining, there were 2 films. You know, I mean, there was Full Metal Jacket, which was the only film he made for from the mid '80s till the late '90s, and then Eyes Wide Shut, and then he died. So it's very hard to say that he had a late period.
I mean, Scorsese has a identifiable early, middle, and late period, I would say. You know, Mean Streets and Taxi Driver early Scorsese, like, I don't know, Goodfellas is mid Scorsese, and Wolf of Wall Street or Irishman or Departed is late Scorsese, right? So maybe him. Although I'm not sure if I'd say that Scorsese is somebody on the level of some of these other people we're talking about. Made good films. Just saying. I'm just trying to think of somebody who has strong late period. By the way, when I saw Wolf of Wall Street in the cinema, I've never laughed as much in my entire life. I was almost sick. I laughed so much watching that. I don't know if it was meant to be as funny as that, but certainly the audience I saw it with find it hilarious. So, yeah. All right. Anything else? I'll just remind people: promo code Scorcher, 25% off all courses. And I don't know where Dee's gone. I think his internet's just died, maybe. And yes, incidentally, I have spotted a lot of super chats that I didn't pick up from last week's Unpopular Opinions, because I had to do on AA Gold, and then Glow in the Dark sent a pile when I re-edit. So I'm going to have to do a super chat catch-up stream at some point. When I do that, I don't know, because I'm going on holiday soon. But maybe later on tonight I'll do an impromptu. I'll see who else is streaming, and if there's a gap in the schedule, I might just come on and bash out a pile of super chats on a solo stream. But
what?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. Anything you'd like to promote, Dee, before we get out of here?
No, I don't.
We have to talk about politics tomorrow. How do you feel about that? I know.
Go on holiday. I might go on holiday again.
Yeah. Okay. I'm probably going to talk about
what politics? What has happened? Has anything happened?
Well, in the absence of like actual news, I'm going to talk about how the media is quietly turning on the rat Zelensky.
Oh, the rat. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also want to look at the cartoonish corruption of certain Democrat senators like Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi, who are, I mean, I've said it before, if they were put into a movie, you would complain that they were badly written. That's how cartoonish.
Yeah.
I mean, I found out a few things about Dianne Feinstein recently.
She's one of the worst.
Oh, it's just ridiculous.
Worst. I mean, she's the one people forget that her driver that she had for years was a literal Chinese spy. You know, that she'd employed for 15 years or something.
I mean, without wishing to give away too much of tomorrow's show, her husband is the premier importer of rare earth minerals from China. And she shut down the rare earth minerals mine in California, which was the biggest mine in America.
What a surprise!
In order to give the Chinese a monopoly, of which her husband is managing the contract. And what was her premise for shutting down that mine? Environmental concerns, of course.
Yeah, of course. We're green, you know.
Just unbelievable.
Because it helps the environment when you just shift production to countries which will massively invest in it.
You know that weird dwarf in Twin Peaks, the one who that is literally like Dianne Feinstein.
The arm. I am the arm.
Oh man. So yeah, I wanna kind of shine the light on that, because our friend Thomas 777 is really dubious about what goes on in California. Is like, hold on a second. We know that the population has become more Hispanic. We know the attitudes of Hispanic people. Why do they keep on returning Dianne Feinstein over and over and over again? Like, what do they see in this woman? Why isn't she replaced with an Hispanic politician?
With a Hispanic, yeah. I mean, because she's also like 88 years old.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But
Diane, I want all my gomomosia.
Yeah, I mean, she is an extraordinary creature, and I want to just shine the light on some of them, with the hope that it might. There's that famous Christopher Lee shot where the light hits the vampire. I'm hoping that if I focus more on Feinstein and Pelosi, they might actually just evaporate. So.
Yeah. Pelosi's another one of those creatures. I've got a wonderful picture of Dianne Feinstein looking at baby pandas, and I'll have to send you for the stream.
But just before we get out of here, Feinstein's like a kind of secret backstage mastermind of the operation, whereas Pelosi, I still feel is kind of like the just imagine her childhood and the gangster she grew up with, and she, in a strange way, she's just like a product of just the utter corruption of California politics. Like she's a kind of lifetime victim of this, whereas Feinstein, I feel like, is kind of really the one who wears the trousers in that state. So
bizarre. I mean, just again, the idea that one could be a politician for like 60 years, 50 years, it's amazing to me.
I mean, before she was a senator, she was the mayor of San Francisco as well.
Yeah.
Back when San Francisco was nice.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think that was a long time ago, but
it was even a shithole in the Dirty Harry movies.
It was a shithole it's been a shithole since the 1960s, I would say. Well, parts of it.
What about Clint Eastwood as someone who's got a good late period?
Yeah, he certainly has a late revival. Yeah.
I mean, he's got distinct phases. It's good, the Western phase, the kind of era around like Unforgiven, and then Clint as director.
The based old man.
Yeah. All right. So, well, thank you very much, Dee. Thank you very much for watching. Promo code. So, shall I play it again? I'm kind of. It's the Academic Agency Summer Sale. Use the promo code SCORCHER 25. SCORCHER. Get your courses now, and we'll see you tomorrow night for Unpopular Opinions, and maybe I'll be back later for super chat catch up. All right, get out, everybody.
Isn't it off now?
That's the wrong one.
Isn't it off now? Hey, got enough.
What goes on in this town is none of your business.
As long as I'm living here, it is.
Then maybe you shouldn't be living here!